Secretary Qiao quits her job to get married, and CEO Lu is jealous. Qiao Yi has been with Lu Linjie for 7 years. She has no name or status, but she is the only one around him. It was not until he asked her to coax another man that she suddenly realized that it is important to know oneself. But when she succeeded in coaxing another man and was about to get engaged, the high-ranking President Lu regretted it. Chapter 1 Kiss. There is a saying in Qiao Yi's circle. Secretaries are divided into 2 types, those who are convenient for you and those who are convenient for others to sleep with. She always thought she was the former, until tonight, when she waited for Lu Linjie to come back as usual, and the man kissed her for the first time after sex. She lay in his arms, trembling with joy, but suddenly heard him say, "Zhu Ronghan, who is cooperating this time, is interested in you. I want you to follow him and keep an eye on him for me." Qiao Yi's smile froze, and before she could say the word of refusal, she saw the man staring at her coldly. "Good boy, you have to be obedient." Lu Linjie has always been sure that she will not refuse him. She can't refuse either. Since her father passed away and the Qiao family went bankrupt, she can only rely on him. But Qiao Yi felt that after 7 years, it was time for her to have feelings for a dog. She endured the bitterness in her heart and asked softly, "Did I do something wrong?" "You did a good job." Lu Linjie has always been very frugal with words, but he was rarely willing to speak on this matter. The company attaches great importance to the introduction of this batch of equipment, and I don't trust it to others. Qiao Yi lowered her eyes. The new girl who came recently is not a familiar face, isn't she more suitable? The man's face changed slightly, leaned down, pinched her shoulders hard, and warned, "Axu is different from you. She is very simple and can't make men happy like you. You'd better not have any ideas about her." Qiao Yi's face turned pale. She has fought with many women of unknown origin in this position, fighting openly and secretly, and the man turned a blind eye. He has never protected anyone like this. Once he starts to protect someone, she will lose without fighting. The man ignored her reaction, answered a phone call, and got out of bed. She could hear the soft and coquettish voice on the other end of the phone clearly. "Mr. Lu, the community suddenly lost power, I'm so scared." The man responded very gently, coaxing softly, "I'll go over now, wait for me, okay?" He threw the contraceptive pill on the bed, closed the door and left. Qiao Yi sat on the bed for a long time before she raised her head and swallowed a pill. When she loved Lu Linjie the most, she never thought of using a child to keep the man, and now she would never do that. Because she had seen Lu Linjie's cruelty. For someone who could even kill his half-brother, he was willing to stay in the Qiao family and give her a meal, which was considered to be the most benevolent. In Lu Linjie's original words, "I don't do charity, if there is no value, get out." So Qiao Yi worked hard in Lu's during the day and worked hard in bed at night. No name and no status. But everyone knew that Qiao Yi was the most loyal and ruthless dog under Lu Linjie. Qiao Yi's cell phone rang. It was a payment reminder from the hospital. After she transferred the money, she called her mother Qiao back. "How are you with Mr. Lu recently? Did you make Mr. Lu angry?" Qiao asked cautiously. It seemed that she had heard some rumors. Qiao Yi pursed her lips. In the past 2 years of mother-daughter conversations, Qiao asked the most about her relationship with Lu Linjie. The Qiao family was gone at that time. Mother was worried. Her younger brother was a premature baby, weak since childhood, and was hospitalized every 2 or 3 days. She didn't expect him to take care of anything. And she just graduated from college, with only this stunning face in Beijing. Those men who were good friends with her father and were called uncles by her turned around and asked her how much per night. She simply asked Lu Linjie. Father's friend of different ages. Qiao Yi is not a love-brained person. She knows better than anyone what she relies on to get to where she is now. She is shameless. She has no bottom line. Lu Linjie acted quickly. He booked a hotel the next day and made an appointment with Zhu Ronghan. He seemed to be eager to send her out. When Qiao Yi arrived, a group of people were drinking happily. Everyone was shocked to see her. All those who came to the drinking party this time knew that Zhu Ronghan had fallen in love with a woman. "I didn't expect it to be her. I didn't expect Lu Linjie to be so generous." Qiao Yi glanced at Lu Linjie. The man sat on the sofa indifferently and didn't even look at her. She is not a person who asks for trouble. On the contrary, she can stay with Lu Linjie the longest because she knows the situation. Everyone present was smart. Someone immediately reacted and took the initiative to greet Qiao Yi. Secretary Qiao, sit here. Qiao Yi walked over and sat down. He glanced around but didn't find the object of his task today. The person next to him glanced at Lu Linjie and whispered, Zhu Ronghan is still on the way, let's wait first. No wonder the man looked unhappy. In all these years when the Lu family dominated the business world, this was the first time they didn't give Lu Linjie a face. Qiao Yi nodded, and then she noticed that there was an empty seat next to the man, as if it was reserved for someone. Who could it be? This thought only went through her mind, and she heard a noise outside. A fair and delicate girl rushed in a panic. A drunken man was chasing after her, grabbing the girl. The girl was so scared that her face turned pale, and her eyes were red as she shouted into the box, Mr. Lu, save me. Get out. Lu Linjie's face became darker and darker, and a word with a chill squeezed out of his teeth. Qiao Yi had been with him for so long, and this was the first time she saw him look so fierce. The man was sobered up and ran away in a hurry. In the huge box, only Jiang Xieshue was sobbing quietly. I'm sorry, Mr. Lu, we didn't pay attention. We apologize to you. The hotel manager came over and apologized repeatedly. The man just sat there without saying a word. There was no need for him to say anything when something like this happened. Someone stood up and challenged the hotel manager, didn't pay attention? Did you know you scared our sister-in-law? Sister-in-law? Qiao Yi was in a trance. Remembering what Lu Linjie said, they were different. They were indeed different. She had been with him for so many years, and people outside had always called her secretary Qiao politely. Lu Linjie's air pressure was very low. He took off his coat and covered his girlfriend with it. He lowered his head and said something to coax her. Jiang Xieshue gradually stopped crying, but she just held the corner of Lu Linjie's clothes tightly. The two looked very close. Lu Linjie simply picked up the girl and left. The people in the box looked at each other in bewilderment. Mr. Lu has left, so what will happen in this negotiation? Someone couldn't help asking, but before he could finish, he was poked by the person next to him, and everyone looked at Qiao Yi. Negotiations naturally had to continue. This was not the first time Qiao Yi had to clean up this mess for Lu Linjie. This was the first time he had abandoned a business dinner for a woman. 20 minutes later, she met Zhu Ronghan, a man who looked quite gentle and elegant. His conversation did not show any improper intentions towards her as rumored, but rather he was very distant. Miss Qiao. The man's address was neither light nor heavy. Qiao Yi looked up and saw Zhu Ronghan smiling slightly, it's getting late, I'll take you home. Thank you. Qiao Yi did not refuse. And Zhu Ronghan just took her downstairs in the community and drove away. Qiao Yi looked at the taillights of the car going away and breathed a sigh of relief. She returned to the room and just opened the door. A figure pressed her hard against the wall, pushing against her, and the tongue that wrapped around her was soft, flexible and slippery, with an irresistible dominance. Chapter 2 Replacement. Qiao Yi didn't have time to turn on the light. The room was dark, which magnified the touch. The man was silent and passionate. His palm was big. He reached up to tear off her underwear. The thin calluses at the base of his fingers made her feel a little itchy. Qiao Yi was not hypocritical. They both did it before. As for her relationship with Lu Linjie, it was only in bed that the man would indulge her a little, giving her a little initiative. Qiao Yi climbed the man's arm that was constantly moving, and responded in a confused manner. Their breathing was very low, suppressed and vague. She looked at Lu Linjie's eyebrows trapped in the darkness. Maybe she drank some wine during the social event, which made her bolder. Mr. Lu, are you not satisfied tonight? The man suddenly stopped and retracted his hand. His sharp eyes shot over in the darkness coldly and oppressively, like a sword. She is still young, I am afraid of scaring her. Qiao Yi's lips turned pale. She was only 21 that night when she followed Lu Linjie. 1 year younger than Jiang Xieshue. She forced a smile, sorry, Mr. Lu, I'm not feeling well today. I'm on my period. Lu Linjie looked at her, unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his strong and hot chest, and walked straight to the bathroom. The muscles on his back were slightly contracted. Qiao Yi lowered her head and picked up the underwear that the man had thrown on the ground. The man didn't stay overnight that night. That was good. At least she didn't have to be tortured to death, and she had to go to the company the next day. But when Qiao Yi arrived at the company, she found that her workstation had changed a lot. The cactus pot was replaced with Stellar Lu. The group photo next to the computer was replaced by a photo of two people. The background was Disney, and the girl was holding Stellar Lu and Lingner Bell, smiling happily. Qiao Yi's eyes fell on the face of the man next to her and couldn't move away. It turns out that he can also smile. He can also take photos on his own initiative. The only photo she took with him was a group photo of dozens of people at the company's team building. Secretary Qiao. A timid voice suddenly came from behind her. Qiao Yi turned around and saw Jiang Xiaoxue holding a mug. The cup looked familiar. It seemed to be the couple cup that Lu Lin asked her to customize last month. At that time, she thought it was for her. Qiao Yi took a glance and then looked away. Jiang Xiaoxue was a little at a loss. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, I wanted to wait for you to move to the workstation, but President Lu urged me. I have packed your things for you, and they are not messed up. She pointed to the cardboard box next to the potted plants in the corner. It was packed neatly. But she didn't have much to pack, basically just documents. And the big group photo. It doesn't matter. Qiao Yi didn't want to embarrass the little girl, and she couldn't afford to embarrass her. Jiang Xiaoxue looked very guilty, and her tears were about to fall. Qiao Yi was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she would really make him cry. I'm going to report to Mr. Lu. After she finished speaking, she went to the president's office. The man sat in an office chair, looking down at the documents. When he heard someone coming in, he said without raising his head, I have given your resignation procedures to the Human Resources Department. You don't have to leave in a hurry. Wait for her to adapt. Qiao Yi naturally couldn't say no. Okay, Mr. Lu. The man paused while flipping through the documents, looked up at her, and his eyes were heavy. Zhu Ronghan hasn't agreed to sign the contract yet. I will only give you 1 month. I know. Qiao Yi answered in a businesslike manner, with a calm expression. Mr. Lu has nothing else to do, I'll go back first. Wait. The man stopped her again. Lu Linjie pressed his eyebrows. After you go back, move out and live somewhere else. Qiao Yi's body stiffened, and she looked at him in a daze. She lived in that apartment for 7 years. From furniture to decoration, she did everything herself. Now he asked her to move out. Lu Linjie's tone left no room for negotiation. That apartment is close to her school and company, convenient. Qiao Yi couldn't help pinching her fingers. With Lu Linjie's financial resources, he could definitely buy a new property. The man seemed to see through her thoughts. It's too late to disperse the formaldehyde. I know. Qiao Yi smiled, a little self-deprecating. Lu Linjie didn't say he would arrange a new place for her, so she looked for a house by herself. She didn't take much with her. Those things were originally spent on Lu Linjie's money. She was not qualified to take them away. However, finding a house is a troublesome thing. Qiao Yi stayed in a hotel temporarily, soaked herself in the bathtub, took out her mobile phone, and asked her friend Xiao Xiao to come out the next day. How could that scumbag surnamed Lu treat you like this? I'm going to settle accounts with him. Xiao Xiao was very angry when she knew Qiao Yi was looking for a house. Before she even had time to sit down, she slammed the table and stood up. Qiao Yi held her down, shook his head and said, I came to you because I heard that your brother and Zhu Ronghan were college classmates in Country M, so I wanted to find you to learn about him. Zhu Ronghan. Xiao Xiao frowned. Why are you asking him? Qiao Yi didn't dare to tell Xiao Xiao about this. With her temper, she had to find Lu Linjie to make trouble. But Xiao Xiao had the Xiao family to back her up. She had nothing. So she responded, Lu intends to contact him to see if there is a chance for cooperation. It was Lu Linjie who asked you to do it again. He wants their horse to run but doesn't give it grass. He is more capitalist than the capitalists. Xiao Xiao stared at her, feeling unfair and distressed and said, Lu Linjie is so inhumane, why did you reject my brother in the first place? Xiao Xiao, your brother and I have nothing. Qiao Yi interrupted her solemnly. Xiao Xiao heard that she was so eager to sever the relationship, and she drooped her face unhappily. Qiao Yi was a little helpless. It was a well-known fact that she followed Lu Linjie. No decent family would let her marry. Besides, it would be difficult for any woman to settle for a new relationship after experiencing a man with a long-lasting status like Lu Linjie. As for the past, she didn't want to mention it anymore. The two looked at each other, and Xiao Xiao was defeated. Okay, I'll go back and ask my brother for you. Thank you. Qiao Yi thanked sincerely. At night, Qiao Yi was lying on the big bed in the hotel when she received a message from Xiao Xiao. Zhu Ronghan's mother is of Japanese descent, so he has lived in Japan since he was a child. He likes Japanese food and is also interested in collecting. He often goes to auctions. Oh, yes, there is a charity auction at the hotel where you are staying tonight. My brother is here too. If you want to go, I'll ask my brother to take you in. Qiao Yi thought about it and immediately set off, taking out a plain white dress from the suitcase. This was originally prepared for Lu Linjie's birthday party next month. Now he estimated that she was no longer needed. Qiao Yi changed into a dress and put on makeup. She waited for Xiao Mingchen to pick her up at the door of the hall. She saw a pair of eye-catching figures in the crowd from a distance. It was Lu Linjie. Wearing a silver-gray suit, he walked into the banquet hall surrounded by the crowd. The colorful lights flashed from his face, but he couldn't cover up the oppression that kept people away. Chapter 3 Protection. The little girl beside him was cute and pretty, holding his arm closely, smiling shyly and sweetly. This godlike man was more humane. A handsome man and a beautiful woman, a perfect match. Qiao Yi subconsciously wanted to avoid him, but Jiang Xieshua had already seen her and greeted her with sparkling eyes. Secretary Qiao, what a coincidence, are you also here to attend the auction? Qiao Yi could only stand still and glance at Lu Linjie. The man's expression was always cold, but when his eyes touched the little girl beside him, his eyebrows and eyes were gentle. Yeah. She looked away and nodded to Jiang Xieshua. The attitude was very polite. Jiang Xieshua was very enthusiastic, and her smile was obedient and sweet. Then let's go in together. Qiao Yi was a little confused. The things between her and Lu Linjie were obscure to anyone who heard them. Jiang Xieshua didn't seem to mind at all. But Qiao Yi couldn't be so careless. I'm waiting for a friend. She shook her head and refused. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard someone calling her. Qiao Qiao. Xiao Mingchen trotted towards her from outside, a little out of breath, his shirt a little messy. Sorry, there was a traffic jam on the road, so I kept you waiting for a long time. No, I just got off. Qiao Yi smiled. That's good. Xiao Mingchen said, taking her hand without saying anything and putting it on his arm, just like other female companions. Qiao Yi was stunned for a moment, and wanted to pull her hand back but was held down by the other party. Xiao Mingchen seemed to want to save her face, looking at Lu Linjie with some hostility. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lu, I can take Qiao Qiao in. Many people around looked over. She didn't want to make the scene awkward. She just let him do it. Jiang Xieshua stood aside, showing an expression of sudden enlightenment, and winked at Qiao Yi ambiguously. Then Secretary Qiao, let's go in first, see you inside. Qiao Yi pulled the corner of her lip and wanted to say yes, but she was suddenly met with Lu Linjie's cold eyes. Her throat was dry, watching the man take Jiang Xieshua into the inner hall. With Xiao Mingchen, she also successfully entered the banquet hall. Xiao Mingchen hurriedly let her go and apologized sincerely. I'm sorry Qiao Qiao, I'm afraid he will bully you. The worry in his eyes was real. Qiao Yi was silent, of course she knew the rumors outside. Lu Linjie generously took Jiang Xieshua to various occasions, which further confirmed that she was abandoned. But she didn't care. Anyway, her reputation had long been rotten. However, Xiao Mingchen was different. Qiao Yi didn't want to cause trouble for Xiao Mingchen. Brother Xiao, go and do your thing. Xiao Mingchen said anxiously, Qiao Qiao, don't be so distant with me. I heard from Xiao Xiao that you want to contact Zhu Ronghan, right? I have some friendship with him, so I can help you talk to him. His eyes were too hot. Qiao Yi pursed her lips. Thank you, Brother Xiao, but it's really not necessary. She no longer looked at Xiao Mingchen's hurt expression and chose to leave. But there were too many people participating in the charity auction. It's called a charity auction, but it's mainly to make connections through the occasion. Tonight there is Lu, who is a big name in the business world. And Zhu Ronghan, who has been making a lot of noise in the Beijing circle recently. In addition, Zhu Ronghan himself is quite mysterious and rarely appears in occasions, so it's difficult to meet him. This time there is a chance, and there are too many people who want to talk to him. Qiao Yi looked at the people inside and outside, and went to the bathroom halfway, but never thought that someone would block the door. Lu Linjie, the little princess who is pampered by the Hu family in Beijing. At this moment, he was blocking the door of the bathroom, staring at her with hostility. What is your relationship with Xiao Mingchen? Qiao Yi frowned. I'm sorry. When has Wu Lingjie ever been looked down upon like this? She was so angry that she said something without thinking. How come you are tired of being played by Lu Linjie and want to go back to Xiao Mingchen? Qiao Yi, do you have any shame? Qiao Yi's face also changed. In the past few years, no one has brought her relationship with Lu Linjie to the table. It's more or less because of Lu Linjie's concern. Now, she has become a discarded pet. Qiao Yi knows that from now on, this kind of humiliation will only increase. She couldn't afford to offend any of them, and said in a cold voice, Brother Xiao and I are just friends. Friends? Wu Lingjie didn't believe it. What friends are you talking about in public? Stay away from Xiao Mingchen. Qiao Yi didn't mean to get involved between them, and patiently explained, Miss Wu, I made it very clear that Brother Xiao and I are just friends. Besides, you know the relationship between me and Xiao Xiao. Today, Brother Xiao took me to the auction for Xiao Xiao's sake, that's all. She bit the last for words. Wu Lingjie was a little embarrassed. Xiao Mingchen rushed over at this time, pulled Wu Lingjie over, and whispered, What are you doing? Didn't I tell you that it has nothing to do with Qiao Qiao today? Don't make trouble for Qiao Qiao. Wu Lingjie looked at Xiao Mingchen in disbelief, a little aggrieved. Xiao Mingchen, are you protecting this woman? We are about to get engaged, and I will never allow my fiancée to have an affair with other women. More and more people were watching the excitement around. Xiao Mingchen was also angry. I said, there is nothing between Qiao Qiao and me, why don't you believe it? Wu Lingjie pressed relentlessly, then why do you have her photos in your computer? Xiao Mingchen's face was embarrassed for a moment, and he looked at Qiao Yi in panic. Qiao Yi's face also sank slightly. Those who came today were all well-known figures in Beijing. She didn't want to cause trouble. But Wu Lingjie didn't care, not to mention Qiao Yi, she didn't even care about Xiao Mingchen's face. A waiter happened to pass by, and Wu Lingjie picked up a glass of wine and poured it on Qiao Yi. Bitch. After cursing, she covered her red eyes and ran away. There were exclamations all around. Qiao Yi's chest was all wet. The red wine on their white dress was like a blooming blood-red rose, which was particularly dazzling. The material of the dress cannot be wet. It will be soaked if it gets wet. Qiao Yi panicked no matter how calm she was. She hurriedly covered her chest that was almost exposed with her hands. When she looked up, she saw Lu Linjie not far away. He stood at the end of the noisy crowd. In the halo of the top light, his face was a little blurry and could not be seen clearly. She subconsciously wanted to walk towards him. But the next second, there was a little girl in his arms. He hugged her with one hand, as if he was afraid that she would be touched by people passing by. Qiao Yi suddenly woke up. The embarrassment of reality made her tremble all over. I'm sorry, Qiao Qiao. Xiao Mingchen was at a loss and wanted to apologize to her, but his eyes were anxiously looking in the direction where Wu Lingjie left, fearing that Wu Lingjie would cause trouble again in anger. Qiao Yi smiled reluctantly. I'm fine, you go after Miss Wu. Xiao Mingchen glanced at her guiltily and hurriedly chased after her. People around pointed and talked until a large coat covered her. Qiao Yi looked up and was stunned. It was Zhu Ronghan. He gentlemanly blocked those malicious eyes with his tall and straight body. Chapter 4, Break. Seeing that he was about to leave, Huang Beiyu immediately stomped her feet hard on the ground regardless of how strong the gushing miasma was. The corroded ground immediately splashed with dirt, and her body turned into a black light, breaking through the neatness and bursting towards Yunli's direction. Bei Xuanning, what did you do to me? The emperor's voice was also weak, and the mysterious power in his body seemed to have been broken. Come to think of it, except for the time when she first knew that he was the owner of the night garden, when she took the initiative to bring it up, Chu Mufeng indeed never mentioned anything about her pregnancy. This matter has nothing to do with you, you'd better not care about it. Mu Rongchen had important things to do today, and it would be the same if he dealt with Bei Xuanning later. There have been many rumors about Bei Xuanning in the capital. It is said that after Bei Xuanning recovered from his dementia, his strength increased greatly, but no one knows what level he is at. It's as if there's a powerful backlash or absorbing force occurring in the body. What exactly is that? She had wanted to return the same way she came, but was afraid that the cage could not be opened. If this was also a way out, that would be a good idea. She scolded herself harshly. She had always been fearless in everything she did, but now she was stuck in this emotional situation and couldn't get out. In almost just a moment, the 7 Yuanshan stage powerful men had trapped the phoenix. At the same time, the other two also rushed towards Zhao Chanyu. 432 Qiangang swords formed a large formation, combining with each other, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of sword chi were stimulated. The sword chi continued to attack Aoshue's dragon body. The power protecting Aoshue's dragon body continued to dissipate. Somewhere in our hearts we humans have begun to rebel against the lizard men, and somewhere in our hearts we humans have begun to say no. In order to restore their power over us, the lizard men will definitely try their best to drag us to the edge of the cliff. There is more than one famous bone church in Europe. In Portugal, the first one is their bone church, in Évora, Portugal, which everyone wants to visit. De Jia was still practicing the heavenly soldier's mysterious art to absorb the energy of the Qianhe immortal pill. Of course, the mysterious art still needed to be practiced for a while, and then absorbed by simply sitting in meditation. When practicing the mysterious art, the absorption speed was more than 10 times that of simply sitting in meditation. It turned out that Gui Yingjing and Shui Shaojie came here just because they saw the score list. The score of De Jia was really amazing, which made the two of them come here together. This score list also determined the official list of Qianhe Navy selection. Anyone who scored no less than 8 points could enter the Qianhe Navy. The two of them simultaneously closed the conversation. The channel hidden in the thick network information disappeared instantly, as if it had never appeared. When Yi Hen came back from his walk, the Demon King slowly woke up. At this time, around 10 o'clock in the morning, as expected, Shuai prepared breakfast on time and came to Yi Hen's room to report. Then, the suspended stone platform carried Bunker and Pingfan slowly downwards like an elevator. At this time, Yi Hen Qianyu and General Manager Du Cheng also walked out of the office. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Everyone focused their attention on the person who spoke. The Ocean Corporation's Earth headquarters has not fallen, and Australia, the last territory of mankind, is still firmly under control. However, some major changes have taken place in mankind itself. Master Yarn said that he had slain many demons and monsters here, but he knew that he had not encountered any demons or evil spirits so far. In the past 2 days, Yi Lin has truly experienced the warmth of home. The enthusiasm and simplicity of his elder brother and sister-in-law have made him feel deeply moved. No matter what, this is family, this is his brother whose blood is thicker than water. It is almost rare for someone like Uniqlo to have someone take care of his funeral and bury him properly after his death. This was not looking at herself, but at what was behind her, Qiao Man suddenly felt something and shuddered. Don't be afraid of being laughed at. I've come all the way here, and I'll be satisfied with a glass of water. Su Jinyan took the water with both hands and took a big sip. Along their way they encountered many thorns and obstacles, but these were not important at all. What was important was that these obstacles were not obstacles at all in Li Bixia's eyes. They were sacrifices for his men. Of course Wang Chen didn't know that he was being teased. Looking at the sunset, the street lights in the city were already on. In fact, it gets dark later in the summer, but it's really beautiful before it gets dark. A long time has passed unknowingly. I guess the nightlife in the city has begun, right? You should know that a sword made by the blacksmith shop in the south of the city costs less than half a tael of silver, and the ones they make are more beautiful and exquisite than yours. Yu Fei said as he hugged Su Li and left, and Jiang Tong and Yi Xin also left. When Yi Xin left, she wanted to look back to see how Yuan Xinghao was doing, but Jiang Tong blocked her view with his hand, preventing her from looking. To intercept the fairy of flowers, I'm afraid only the Demon King Bao could come up with such an idea. Eli poured the blood onto the film and then attached it to the cross. This film allowed the blood on it to penetrate at an extremely slow rate. In short, if this film was attached to the surface of their blue rose, Eli could control the speed at which the cross absorbed blood. At that time, Wansu probably wanted to tell her that if she wanted to come to X, she could get a discount. That should be the case, right? Why don't you make tea for the leaders quickly? Take out my tea Eguinian. Wansu glanced at Bo Xingji, who really had no sense at all. Accompanied by a shrill howl, Linxie's entire body was thrown out, spitting out blood in the air, his face turned pale. Suddenly, a mighty cheetah appeared. Its eyes were full of bloodshot light, and there was a real evil aura surrounding its body. Since the rock dragon has left, Qin Yuming and He Xiaoyun have to start their activities. They packed up briefly and waited until the rock dragon went further away and the shaking could no longer be felt before they began their activities. As a player from Jinhuang City who had participated in the Tsukumiyama Rookie Trainer Conference and had a head-on confrontation with Yang Dan, Ji would never forget that trainer and that Togaman. Chapter 5. Qiao Yi opened his eyes. Then I saw Zhu Ronghan wearing casual sportswear. He held her in his arms, with some sweat on his forehead, as if he had just finished exercising. Noticing that she had woken up, he lowered his head and said, "You're awake." Qiao Yi moved her arms, but the man showed no sign of letting go of her. Apart from Lu Linjie, this was her first time to have close contact with another man. Qiao Yi felt a little unnatural and pursed her lips. "Yeah. Zhu Ronghan, have you had breakfast?" Qiao Yi shook his head. Seeing that the man was about to carry her into their house, she quickly asked, "Mr. Zhu, can I walk by myself?" "Of course." The man curled his lips and put her down gentlemanly. Qiao Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Just as her toes touched the ground, she heard a scream. "Secretary Qiao." Qiao Yi's body stiffened, and he turned around to see Jiang Sheshue's face full of surprise. Because all the attention was on Zhu Ronghan just now. Only now did she notice that this was a famous villa area for the wealthy in Beijing. Qiao Yi has been here many times. Lu Linjie lives here. She didn't expect that the accommodation Zhu Ronghan arranged for her was here. And the building where Zhu Ronghan lives happened to be right opposite the building where Lu Linjie lives. Qiao Yi couldn't help but glance behind Jiang Sheshue, and happened to meet Lu Linjie's deep and cold eyes. The man's face seemed to be covered with frost. Gloomy and unkind. She still kept her hand on Zhu Ronghan's arm. Qiao Yi subconsciously felt a little flustered. Afraid of men getting angry. But he quickly regained his composure. Given their current relationship, she had no right to be angry. Neither did he. Qiao Yi retracted his gaze, adhered to his duties as an employee, and greeted them, "Mr. Lu, Ms. Jiang. It's really you, Secretary Qiao. What a coincidence. I thought I was seeing things." Jiang Sheshue greeted enthusiastically, as if she was unaware of the subtle atmosphere, but she looked at Zhu Ronghan with some surprise. "Is this your boyfriend?" Qiao Yi glanced at Jiang Sheshue. I don't know whether she really doesn't know Zhu Ronghan or is pretending not to know him. I deliberately chose this time to ask. She smiled and said, "This is Mr. Zhu Ronghan, the client that Mr. Lu asked me to be in charge of connecting with." Jiang Sheshue seemed to suddenly remember something. Her expression was a little embarrassed and her face turned red. Qiao Yi sneered in his heart. It seems that Jiang Sheshue also understands the meaning of this connection. There is no shortage of such transactions in the business world. But it's somewhat embarrassing to talk about it openly. It makes both sides lose face. She had no intention of helping the little girl out. Lu Linjie came over, glanced at her calmly, then looked at Zhu Ronghan, and said in a low voice, "When did Mr. Zhu move in?" "It's just these 2 days. I didn't expect that President Lu would also live here." Zhu Ronghan smiled faintly. Compared with the sharp temperament of Lu Linjie, he looked like a gentle nobleman. Lu Linjie nodded dignifiedly, "I'll come visit you when I have the chance. I won't bother you today." "Mr. Lu, you're welcome." Zhu Ronghan was equally polite and courteous. Lu Linjie took Jiang Sheshue away. Qiao Yi looked at Zhu Ronghan. The man was not embarrassed by the incident, but said frankly, "I've asked someone to bring your luggage upstairs. You can eat something with me first." "Okay." Qiao Yi didn't hesitate. She had breakfast with Zhu Ronghan. The nanny prepared both Japanese and Western breakfasts. For 2 people, the portion is a bit too much. Qiao Yi observed Zhu Ronghan. He and Lu Linjie have very similar dining habits. "I don't like talking during meals." The two finished their meal in silence. Zhu Ronghan looked at the empty French toast and baked eggs in front of Qiao Yi and smiled. "I wasn't sure what kind of breakfast you were used to, so I asked the nanny to prepare too. You can tell the nanny if you need anything later." Qiao Yi was quite surprised. In fact, Zhu Ronghan doesn't need to worry about such trivial matters. But he did it. Maybe it has something to do with his upbringing. Qiao Yi couldn't help but say, "Thank you, Mr. Zhu, but don't bother me. I'm not picky, and living here is already a nuisance. I have plenty of vacancies here, so I won't bother you." After Zhu Ronghan finished speaking, he glanced at Qiao Yi's hesitant expression and added with a smile, "Besides, I admire your work ability. I don't know much about the Chinese region, and I will need your help in many areas in the future, so you don't have to feel burdened. He said it so sincerely. If he hadn't gotten out of the car to hug her, Qiao Yi would have been a little confused about the man's intentions. But it has to be said, Zhu Ronghan is indeed a master. She unconsciously let down a lot of her psychological defenses. Zhu Ronghan handed her another business card and said, I have a meeting later, so I can't accompany you. If you need anything, you can ask the nanny to get it for you. If you need anything, just call me on my personal line. Qiao Yi took the business card and said, I understand. Zhu Ronghan left to get down to business. The nanny came over and led her to a room on the second floor. Miss Qiao, you stay here. Your luggage has been put away for you. The nanny was about 50 years old. She was Japanese, but she spoke Chinese quite fluently. Qiao Yi thanked her politely. The nanny left. Qiao Yi opened a suitcase and put his things in place before he had time to look at his phone. Xiao Xiao sent a lot of messages and had missed calls. Qiao Yi didn't see it. They all apologized to her for what happened last night. Xiao Mingchen also posted a lot. Qiao Yi called Xiao Xiao back. As for Xiao Mingchen, she thought about it and decided to respond politely. Unexpectedly, the message she sent was greeted with a red exclamation mark. But it's okay this way. The Xiao family is going to marry the Hua family, so she should keep some distance from Xiao Mingchen. But Qiao Yi didn't expect that Xiao Mingchen's mother would come to his house. He told her to meet him at a cafe, otherwise she would bear the consequences. Qiao Yi had no leverage over Xiao's mother, so she was not afraid at all. But Xiao's mother was really difficult to deal with. She called her every day to harass her. In the end, Qiao Yi had no choice but to compromise and agree. Okay, see you at East Street Cafe at 3 p.m. When Qiao Yi arrived, Xiao's mother was already waiting for her. Qiao Yi looked at her. The mink cape and emerald green cheongsam she wore, with the jade egg-shaped ring in her hand, made her look even more elegant and unattainable. She walked over and greeted him politely. Hello, auntie. Xiao's mother looked at her, glanced at the stool, and motioned for her to sit down. Qiao Yi was not restrained either. He pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. You should know about Mingchen's marriage to the Hua family, right? Xiao's mother went straight to the point. I know. Qiao Yi took a sip of coffee, his tone indifferent. Since you know this, why do you still want to be unclear with Mingchen? The woman slammed the table and asked harshly. Qiao Yi frowned. Aunt, Brother Xiao and I have nothing to do with each other. I never had any idea about him before, and I won't do that in the future, please rest assured. Chapter 6 Irony. But Xiao's mother didn't believe it and warned her. I've seen a lot of women like you. If you know what's good for you, then keep your word. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Zhou was tired of this situation. She responded in a deep voice, I know, Aunt, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. She thought that everything was clear now and Xiao's mother would let her go. Humph, is this the level of upbringing of the Qiao family? Did I let you go? No wonder you guys went bankrupt and had no one to help you, so you ended up being bedmates. You are really bringing up something that is not worth mentioning. Qiao Yi's face turned cold. Aunt, what do you mean by that? I've already explained it to you clearly, why are you being so aggressive? Qiao Yi was polite to Xiao's mother for Xiao's sake. But everything Xiao's mother mentioned hit her sore spots. She is not someone who will swallow her anger. Qiao Yi, don't you want people to tell you what you did? You're flirting with other people and bringing disgrace to our family. One moment you're flirting with Mr. Lu, but he only treats you as a bed partner. The next moment you're flirting with Zhu Ronghan, you're so shameless. Fortunately, I am watching over the Xiao family. I will never let you play with Mingchen's feelings. You are such a fickle woman. You dare to do it but dare not let others say it. It's really strange. Xiao's mother raised her eyebrows and had a sarcastic smile on her lips. Aunt, I tolerate you again and again because I miss you as Xiao's mother. But if you keep talking nonsense, I will get to the bottom of it. Qiao Yi really couldn't stay there any longer. Just as she stood up, the wind chimes at the door rang. Qiao Yi looked over subconsciously and saw a familiar figure. It's Lu Linjie. Lu Linjie and Jiang Xiaoxue walked in together. Jiang Xiaoxue was holding a few exquisite small boxes in her hands, with a happy smile on her face. Lu Linjie lowered his head slightly and listened to her patiently. The man occasionally nodded or responded softly, and almost always met her requests. Qiao Yi paused while holding the bag. Her eyes fell on Lu Linjie, and were difficult to understand. Mother Xiao followed Qiao Yi's line of sight. When she saw Lu Linjie and Jiang Xiexue, her face was full of sarcasm. Qiao Yi, do you see clearly? You are just a toy for Mr. Lu to entertain himself. Do you really think someone of your status will marry you? Qiao Yi felt a pain in his heart. She did not respond to Xiao's mother's words, but left silently. Qiao Yi walked out the door and was about to take a taxi when he heard a sweet and charming voice coming from behind him. Boss Lu, isn't that Secretary Qiao? Secretary Qiao. Secretary Qiao. The person who called her was Jiang Xiexue. Qiao Yi could only stand still, turn around and look at Lu Linjie. What a coincidence, Mr. Lu, Ms. Jiang, you are here too. Yes, Mr. Lu and I came here to drink coffee. Jiang Xiexue's face was full of happy smile at this moment. It was so bright that it hurt Qiao Yi's chest. Qiao Yi said politely, in that case, I have something else to do, so I won't bother you anymore. Having said that, she turned and was about to leave. Lu Linjie frowned and reached out to grab Qiao Yi, who was about to leave. What's the hurry? Seeing the man's cold eyes, Qiao Yi looked at him puzzledly. Boss Lu, do you have any other instructions? Her attitude remained as distant as ever. Lu Linjie did not respond, but lowered his head and spoke gently to Jiang Xiexue. We'll be going to the mall later and we'll need someone to carry your stuff for you. Do you think she can do the job? He actually asked her to carry something for Jiang Xiexue. Qiao Yi was unhappy, but he didn't show it on his face. Jiang Xiexue shook her head. No need to trouble Secretary Qiao. Doesn't she have something else to do? I can bring it up myself. Her smile is sweet and considerate. No wonder Lu Linjie likes it. Before Qiao Yi could speak, Lu Linjie made the decision for her. Stay and follow. After saying that, Lu Linjie went to buy coffee first. Only Qiao Yi and Jiang Xiexue were left. Jiang Xiexue didn't seem to notice Qiao Yi's discomfort. She said enthusiastically, Secretary Qiao, Mr. Lu really values you and even lets you follow him when he goes shopping. Pay attention to. This girl is really simple. Qiao Yi did not respond. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Jiang Xiexue thought she had said something wrong. Secretary Qiao, did I say something wrong? Just as Qiao Yi was about to explain, he saw Lu Linjie coming out. He only had 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Seeing Jiang Xiexue pouting, Lu Linjie glanced at Qiao Yi with cold eyes. Qiao Yi avoided his sight. Lu Linjie lowered his head and asked Jiang Xiexue, why, did she make you unhappy? Hearing this, Jiang Xiexue shook her head and a well-behaved smile appeared on her face again. No, I had a great chat with Secretary Qiao, but I'm a little tired and don't want to go shopping. Then go home and we'll go next time. The man responded very gently and coaxed Jiang Xiexue softly. Qiao Yi was in a daze for a moment. Mr. Lu, Ms. Jiang, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. It's not appropriate to continue staying here as a light bulb. Just as Qiao Yi was about to leave, Lu Linjie stopped him again. Wait. A man's cold voice came to my ears. Get in the car. But Qiao Yi didn't want to. She wanted to find a reason to refuse. But as soon as he looked into Lu Linjie's dark eyes, she seemed to understand. Jiang Xiexue glanced at Qiao Yi and said softly, Secretary Qiao, it's so hot, it won't be a problem if you ask Mr. Lu to give you a ride. As she spoke, she opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. Qiao Yi looked at that place, which once belonged to him. But the woman sitting now is no longer her. Qiao Yi was distracted for a moment, and his eyes unconsciously turned red. She subconsciously turned her head away, not wanting them to notice that she was acting strangely. The next second, the man's urging voice came again. Qiao Yi, get in the car. Don't make me say it for the 3rd time. Qiao Yi's face turned pale. He got into the car silently and sat in the back seat. Boss Lu, Secretary Qiao didn't do anything wrong, why are you so fierce? Jiang Xiexue stood up for Qiao Yi. Lu Linjie's gloomy expression eased a little. His voice was gentle, be careful next time. Jiang Xiexue nodded with satisfaction. Qiao Yi said nothing and just looked out the car window. Lu Linjie glanced at Qiao Yi through the rearview mirror. He said coldly, how are you and Zhu Ronghan? After hearing the man's words, Qiao Yi withdrew his gaze. Her eyes fell on Lu Linjie, who was in the driver's seat. Fine. Zhu Ronghan was sincere, attentive and respectful to her. In this respect, he is better than Lu Linjie. There was a strange emotion in the man's eyes. Then, he returned to his previous dark look. It seems like you get along well with him. Yes. Qiao Yi did not deny it. Lu Linjie's hands quietly tightened on the steering wheel. Qiao Yi, don't forget what your purpose this time is. How could she forget? The man whom she had loved for 7 years pushed her away and gave her to another man. Mr. Lu, don't worry, I will definitely let him sign the contract within a month. Chapter 7 Worry. And I've already thought of a way to please him. Zhu Ronghan is Japanese, and I decided to learn Japanese cuisine, so that I can get closer to him. Mr. Lu, what do you think? To win a man, you must win his stomach. At the beginning, she treated Lu Linjie the same way. Unexpectedly, Lu Linjie sneered. Qiao Yi didn't understand what it meant. Her eyes darkened. Boss Lu, this method won't work. Lu Linjie did not answer her question, his thoughts drifting back to the past. Once upon a time, Qiao Yi studied French cuisine for him. Now, she wants to learn Japanese food for another man. Thinking of this, Lu Linjie's eyes became increasingly gloomy, but he didn't show it on his face. I only look at the results. Sure enough, Lu Linjie didn't care about her at all. Qiao Yi suppressed the bitterness in his heart. Okay, Mr. Lu. Listening to the conversation between the two, Jiang Sheshua found that she couldn't get a word in at this moment, and pouted a little aggrieved. She sipped the coffee in her hand. Lu Linjie forgot to add sugar to her drink. The bitter taste of a big mouthful of coffee spreads in the mouth. Jiang Sheshua likes to drink sweet coffee. She frowned and said softly, Mr. Lu, this coffee is so bitter. Although this was a complaint, it sounded like coquettishness to Qiao Yi. Lu Linjie freed his right hand and rubbed the top of Jiang Sheshua's head with his warm palm. He coaxed in a low voice, I forgot to add sugar for you, I will pay attention next time. Qiao Yi watched the interaction between Lu Linjie and Jiang Sheshua bitterly. Thinking about herself back then, she just found it ridiculous. But then she thought again that she had sold her body to get ahead. I felt that the intense pain in my heart was slightly relieved. Suddenly Jiang Sheshua exclaimed, Be careful. Lu Linjie braked immediately and the three of them rushed forward at the same time. The passerby who suddenly came out just now bowed to them and apologized on the street. At this moment, Qiao Yi felt the cold pressure all around him and looked up at Lu Linjie. Lu Linjie first confirmed Jiang Sheshua's safety, and then comforted her gently. Are you hurt anywhere? Jiang Sheshua shook her head obediently. It's okay, Mr. Lu. Please drive carefully next time and don't be distracted again. Good. While waiting for the red light, Lu Linjie took out a small gift box from his pocket. I'm afraid you'll be bored along the way, so open it and take a look. Jiang Sheshua was a little surprised by the small gift that Lu Linjie suddenly gave her. This is. You'll know when you open it. Jiang Sheshua opened the box with a happy look on her face and found a diamond necklace inside. Boss Lu, why did you suddenly think of giving me a gift? Lu Linjie looked at Jiang Sheshua lovingly. I saw it at an auction a few days ago. It suits you very well, so I bought it. Jiang Sheshua's eyes were filled with joy. Thank you, Mr. Lu. I like it very much. Although Lu Linjie was looking forward, Qiao Yi could also see that the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. At this moment, Qiao Yi just felt sad. But come to think of it, how can she be compared with Lu Linjie's girlfriend? She is just a lover who is not worthy of being on the stage. Even though I comforted myself in this way, I still couldn't suppress the pain in my heart. Now I am redundant in this car. Instead of being tortured by their love, I might as well get off on my own initiative. Qiao Yi lowered his eyes and spoke slowly. Mr. Lu, I remembered that I have other things to take care of. I'm going in the opposite direction of you. Please stop the car. Lu Linjie ignored it. But Jiang Sheshua, who was sitting in the passenger seat, turned to look at Qiao Yi with a worried look on her face. Secretary Qiao, the sun outside is very hot at this time. Let Mr. Lu take you there. I can take a taxi back by myself. As soon as Jiang Sheshua finished speaking, Lu Linjie parked the car on the side of the street. Since you have something important to do, get out of the car. Thank you, Mr. Lu. As soon as Qiao Yi opened the car door, he heard Lu Linjie's mocking voice. Also, Zhu Ronghan likes you, so you should stay by his side and sign the contract smoothly. Although she already understood the position she held in Lu Linjie's heart, she still felt sad when she heard these words. New. Qiao Yi just closed the car door and looked up again. Only the back of the car remained in her sight. Shouldn't we be used to it? Qiao Yi was just about to go online to hail a taxi when his phone ran out of battery. She could only walk to the side of the street and hail a car. It was just a hot day and there were no taxis waiting. Qiao Yi just felt dizzy. She felt unwell and decided to walk back to avoid fainting. After walking for only 10 minutes, Qiao Yi's eyes went dark and he fell backwards. When he opened his eyes again, the smell of disinfectant in the air filled Qiao Yi's nose and throat. Looking at the familiar figure next to him, Qiao Yi's heart sank slightly. How's it going? Zhu Ronghan saw Qiao Yi's fingers move and immediately stepped forward to ask. But he didn't catch the loneliness in Qiao Yi's eyes. Mr. Zhu, I'm so sorry. The weather is so toxic right now, you shouldn't just wander around the streets aimlessly without any protection. After hearing this, Qiao Yi did not explain what happened to Zhu Ronghan. Instead, he was curious about why Zhu Ronghan appeared there. Why did Mr. Zhu appear in? Before Qiao Yi finished speaking, Zhu Ronghan answered her directly. I finally returned to my hometown. I wanted to take advantage of my free time to go for a walk, but unfortunately I ran into you. I wasn't sure at first when I was on the street. I wanted to go up to you and say hello, but I didn't expect you to pass out from heat stroke. Ms. Qiao, you really don't know how to take care of yourself. The man now had a stern face, not as gentle as before. Qiao Yi bit her lip. Sorry, Mr. Zhu, I'm sorry to bother you. I will pay attention next time. Then you should have a good rest first. The man advised gently. On the other side, after Lu Linjie sent Jiang Xieshue back, he called Qiao Yi. But the other party's phone was always turned off. Lu Linjie asked his assistant to investigate Qiao Yi's movements. After discovering that Qiao Yi had separated from them, he went to the hospital. Considering the current weather, Lu Linjie realized that Qiao Yi might have suffered from heat stroke. After learning the specific hospital, Lu Linjie ran through 3 or 4 red lights and arrived at the hospital. Ms. Qiao, the weather has been hot these days. You must take precautions against heat stroke after you are discharged from the hospital. As soon as Lu Linjie arrived at the door of the ward, he heard Zhu Ronghan's voice. Suddenly, a chill emanated from around him. While thinking, Lu Linjie held the door handle and was about to push the door open. But at this moment, his cell phone rang at an inopportune time. After Lu Linjie saw the caller ID clearly, he answered the call. What's wrong? He asked softly. Jiang Xieshue's voice was hoarse and slightly tearful. Mr. Lu, I was planning to rest right after I came back, but I accidentally slipped in the bathroom and my ankle hurts. Chapter 8 Want. Lu Linjie frowned slightly after hearing this. Be good, stay where you are now and don't move. His deep eyes sank, his gaze swept across the ward, and he turned and left the hospital. At this time, in the ward, Zhu Ronghan's cell phone suddenly rang. Sorry, I have to go out and take a call. Qiao Yi nodded and watched Zhu Ronghan leave. The moment the door opened, Qiao Yi saw a familiar figure. Lu Linjie? How did he end up here? Are you coming to see her? In a hurry, Qiao Yi ignored the needle in his hand, got out of bed and walked out. I happened to see Lu Linjie standing in the elevator. Oh. Qiao Yi looked at the miserable figure reflected on the wall with self-mockery. I'm overthinking. She stumbled back to the bed. The slight wave of emotion that had just ignited in my heart was also extinguished. She was just their lover, known to everyone. Why can't I escape from the crazy thoughts in my heart? After Zhu Ronghan finished the call, he went to the nurse's station. When can the patient in bed 18 be discharged? The nurse answered Zhu Ronghan after checking the computer files. Miss Qiao just had a simple heat stroke. She can leave after receiving the nutrient solution. Zhu Ronghan returned to the ward and saw Qiao Yi looking distraught. Don't worry, you can be discharged from the hospital after these 2 bottles of fluid are finished. Qiao Yi forced a smile from the corner of his mouth. Mr. Zhu, I am really sorry to trouble you with what happened today. If I encounter an emergency, you will also help me, Miss Qiao. As the liquid in the drip was consumed bit by bit, Qiao Yi's heart fell into the abyss bit by bit. Zhu Ronghan stayed by his side until the bottle was empty. Wait here, I'll go find the nurse. Qiao Yi nodded slightly. Zhu Ronghan quickly completed the discharge report. But Qiao Yi was still very weak and needed Zhu Ronghan's help to leave. As the two walked to the elevator, they heard a familiar voice. Secretary Qiao, why are you here? Qiao Yi looked in the direction of the voice and saw Jiang Sheshua being held in Lu Linjie's arms. Mr. Lu, Ms. Jiang, I just had a little heat stroke, but I'm fine now. After hearing this, Jiang Sheshua looked at Qiao Yi worriedly. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao. I wish I had insisted on not letting you get off the car. As she said that, Jiang Sheshua struggled to get off Lu Linjie. Lu Linjie looked at her and shook his head. The doctor said your sprain is serious. Be good and don't move. Qiao Yi didn't want to drag her sick body here to watch them show their affection. Ms. Jiang, you should take good care of your injuries. I'm not feeling well, so I'll leave first. After saying that, Qiao Yi signaled Zhu Ronghan to take him away. Axu, you only need to take care of your own body. Don't worry about other people's. Jiang Sheshua could naturally hear that Lu Linjie was dissatisfied with Qiao Yi's reaction just now. Secretary Qiao isn't feeling well, so don't talk about her like that. Qiao Yi already understood what Lu Linjie meant, and now he didn't want to make trouble for himself. No matter in terms of identity or status, he is not someone that he can afford to offend. Zhu Ronghan also noticed the subtle atmosphere between the two of them, and his face became a little cold. Miss Qiao, let's go. Qiao Yi just nodded slightly and said, okay. Zhu Ronghan could clearly feel that Qiao Yi was forcing a smile. The two walked in silence all their way to the underground garage. Zhu Ronghan opened the car door for Qiao Yi in a gentlemanly manner. Half an hour later they arrived at the villa. As soon as he entered the door, Zhu Ronghan saw the weariness in Qiao Yi's eyes. She was totally listless. What? Are you still not feeling well? Faced with Zhu Ronghan's concern and care, Qiao Yi was unable to react for a moment. After all, Lu Linjie had never treated himself like this. But it was only for a moment, and Qiao Yi raised the corners of his mouth and responded to Zhu Ronghan with a forced smile. Mr. Zhu, it's normal to feel tired after getting in for drip. After hearing this, Zhu Ronghan's frown brows finally relaxed. Then I'll help you go back to your room to rest, and then have the nanny deliver dinner to your room. Qiao Yi was now exhausted, so he did not refuse. Zhu Ronghan sent Qiao Yi back to the room and left. Lying alone in bed, Qiao Yi was deep in thought. Today in the hospital, she had a moment when she wished Lu Lin was here to visit her. It's a pity that all this was just her wishful thinking. Although Qiao Yi had already accepted this ending in his heart. But when her scars were repeatedly revealed, she couldn't help crying. Their identities were unequal from the beginning, which resulted in her losing something faster the more she wanted it. Qiao Yi could only comfort himself by saying that he was about to leave his job. After a while, her body could no longer resist the drowsiness from the drugs. In a daze, Qiao Yi felt a large figure appear in her room. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open her eyes. When Qiao Yi opened his eyes again, it was the next day. The early morning sunlight shone on her thin face, and the discomfort caused by yesterday's heat stroke had completely disappeared. Qiao Yi simply washed off the sticky sweat from yesterday's body and changed into a simple and elegant casual outfit. After all, she had made an appointment with the store manager to learn about Japanese food, so she couldn't be late. After a simple breakfast, Qiao Yi took a taxi to the Japanese restaurant. But she didn't expect that as soon as she stepped into the store, she heard a familiar voice. Secretary Qiao. Jiang Sheshua didn't expect to meet Qiao Yi here. I didn't have time to ask you in detail yesterday. I don't know how your body is recovering now. After a brief moment of daze, Qiao Yi responded softly, what a coincidence. Thank you for your concern. I'm fine after the 4 drip yesterday. By the way, Miss Jiang, why are you here? After hearing this, Jiang Sheshua breathed a sigh of relief, and then complained to Qiao Yi in a coquettish tone. Mr. Lu has given me so many surprises during this period, so I thought about coming here to learn cooking skills and cook a meal for him. As they spoke, Jiang Sheshua took Qiao Yi's arm. Secretary Qiao, you've been with Mr. Lu for so long, you must know his tastes. What does he like? Can you tell me? Her big watery eyes just stared at Qiao Yi. Qiao Yi pulled his arm back somewhat uncomfortably. Ms. Jiang, Mr. Lu likes you so much. No matter what you do, Mr. Lu will like it. Her tone was calm, but her nose felt sore. Jiang Xieshua didn't seem to notice Qiao Yi's mood changes. That being said, I still want to share Mr. Lu's worries. Qiao Yi frowned slightly. She came here to learn cooking, not to listen to how loving Jiang Xieshua and Lu Linjie were. Just at this moment, the manager of the Japanese restaurant came out. Since both of you are ready, let's get started now. Qiao Yi breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the store manager's words. Chapter 9, Hidden. The two of them got along peacefully during the cooking process. But when learning the details from the chef, Jiang Xieshua was not good at knife skills and could only barely keep up. But when the chef sped up, she completely lost control of the knife. "R!" Jiang Xieshua screamed. She just cut her hand accidentally. When seeing the blood gushing out, Qiao Yi quickly bandaged her wound with gauze. At this time, Jiang Xieshua's cell phone rang. After the call was connected, the moment Lu Linjie's voice came out, she could hardly hide her tears. "Mr. Lu. What's wrong?" This was the first time Qiao Yi heard Lu Linjie's panicked voice. "I accidentally cut my hand. Luckily Miss Qiao was by my side and helped me bandage the wound in time." After hearing this, Lu Linjie immediately spoke to comfort him. "Stay where you are and don't move. I'll be there now." At that moment, Jiang Xieshua's face turned red. For such a long time, she still didn't know why Lu Linjie was so good to her. But there is no woman in the world who will always doubt love. Especially when facing a man like Lu Linjie who is excellent in himself. 20 minutes later, Lu Linjie appeared in the Japanese restaurant. Jiang Xieshua didn't expect him to come so soon. And she seemed to have forgotten to say the exact location just now. "Mr. Lu, how did you know I was in this Japanese restaurant?" Lu Linjie rubbed Jiang Xieshua's head lovingly. "I noticed that you had a special liking for the things here." Jiang Xieshua shyly hid in Lu Linjie's arms. "Mr. Lu, I happened to meet Secretary Qiao here today. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't know how to handle an emergency like today." Lu Linjie looked at Jiang Xieshua's wound with heartache. "You are not suitable for holding knives. I will take care of you from now on." Qiao Yi stood beside the kitchen utensils, silently reviewing the knowledge that the manager had just taught him. Her heart had long been numb to Lu Linjie's appearance. After all, Jiang Xieshua is his official girlfriend, so it is normal to worry about her. But when Qiao Yi saw the heartache that Lu Linjie showed towards Jiang Xieshua, she still felt uncomfortable. She had learned cooking for him in the same way, but all she got in return was his ridicule. "If you are not absolutely sure, don't show off your mediocre skills in front of me. Secretary Qiao, be careful." At this time, Qiao Yi was frightened by Jiang Xieshua's exclamation. Memories end. Before she could react, she felt the pain in her palm. Lu Linjie frowned slightly, and subconsciously wanted to step forward and rinse her with cold water. Unfortunately, a figure was one step faster and pulled Qiao Yi to the sink. "How can you still be distracted?" Zhu Ronghan questioned Qiao Yi with a little anger. Qiao Yi did not refute because she could see the distress and worry in Zhu Ronghan's eyes. "I didn't notice it just now, then." Zhu Ronghan wiped the water droplets off Qiao Yi's hands only after making sure that her palms were not red or swollen. "Ms. Qiao, I hope you do something because you like it, not to please anyone. You are very capable at work. You shouldn't waste your time on the stove." The man spoke gently, his eyes full of sincerity. Qiao Yi lowered his eyes, feeling touched. "I understand, Mr. Zhu. Zhu Ronghan is different from Lu Linjie. She shouldn't try to please Zhu Ronghan in the same way she tried to please Lu Linjie." Seeing that Qiao Yi agreed, Zhu Ronghan raised his eyes and looked at Lu Linjie. "I didn't expect Mr. Lu to be here too. We'll excuse ourselves first." The man smiled faintly, as a greeting to Lu Linjie. Lu Linjie nodded slightly. Zhu Ronghan took Qiao Yi away. Jiang Xieshua was held in Lu Linjie's arms, but she still expressed her envy of Zhu Ronghan's attitude towards Qiao Yi. "I see that President Zhu really cares about Secretary Qiao." Lu Linjie lowered his head slightly and looked at the little girl who was acting coquettishly. "Am I not good enough for you?" Hearing Lu Linjie's jealous tone, Jiang Xieshua showed a satisfied expression. In fact, she was not unaware of Lu Linjie and Qiao Yi's past. But Lu Linjie was just playing around with Qiao Yi. He was sincere to her. But it couldn't resist those rumors, so Jiang Sheshue was also observing Lu Linjie's reaction. From the beginning to the end, Lu Linjie's attitude towards Qiao Yi was very cold. It seems that Lu Linjie really doesn't love Qiao Yi anymore. It is impossible for a man who is so considerate to her to have another woman in his heart. The next day, Lu Group President's office. Jiang Sheshue walked in with the contract. Mr. Lu, there are a few things I don't understand about this contract. Is Secretary Qiao not here? Lu Linjie asked in a deep voice without even raising his head. No, she is not in the office. Jiang Sheshue answered truthfully. Lu Linjie's eyes darkened and he made a phone call. At that time, Qiao Yi was accompanying Zhu Ronghan to visit the art exhibition. Ms. Qiao, I heard that you like to visit art exhibitions. It's a good opportunity for you to take a look and see if there are any paintings you like. Qiao Yi looked at Zhu Ronghan with gratitude, but before he could respond, he was interrupted by the sudden ringing of his cell phone. Qiao Yi saw the familiar number and took a deep breath. Sorry, Mr. Zhu, I have to answer a phone call. Zhu Ronghan nodded. Qiao Yi walked out of the exhibition and answered the phone. Qiao Yi, the company has several contracts that need you to review. I want to see you within 20 minutes. Before Qiao Yi could respond, the call was hung up. She hasn't really resigned yet. Qiao Yi had no choice but to return to the exhibition hall. I'm sorry, Mr. Zhu, I have something urgent to deal with, so I can't accompany you to the exhibition. Zhu Ronghan smiled faintly after hearing this. Ms. Qiao, this is a small matter, no need to apologize, do you need me to take you there? Qiao Yi was very grateful for Zhu Ronghan's kindness towards her. Don't bother, I've already called a taxi. Zhu Ronghan didn't force him and just sent Qiao Yi to the door. The moment Qiao Yi walked out of the exhibition hall, he sighed deeply. Zhu Ronghan is like a ray of light in the darkness. If she had chosen him before, perhaps her current situation would be very different. But how many what ifs are there in life? Now that he had been injured, Qiao Yi would not show his weakness again. She doesn't want to rely on anyone in the future. After all, Lu Linjie is a bloody example. Used it for 7 years, then gave it to someone else. After arriving at the company, Qiao Yi adjusted his mood. She knocked on Lu Linjie's office door. Enter. Qiao Yi pushed the door open and asked, Mr. Lu, which contracts need to be But before she could finish her words, she saw Jiang Sheshue standing beside her. Secretary Qiao, I'm so sorry. Lu Linjie looked at the dusty Qiao Yi with an unhappy expression. Didn't I ask you to take care of Shui more during this period? Chapter 10 Learning. Qiao Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. It turned out to be about Jiang Sheshue. I just followed Mr. Lu's instructions and racked my brains to find a way to sign the contract. Jiang Sheshue sensed the strong tension between the two. Boss Lu, I'm a little scared of you doing this. Jiang Sheshue spoke weakly. Lu Linjie immediately regained his gentle demeanor. I'm sorry, I didn't control my emotions well. Immediately afterwards, his cold gaze fell on Qiao Yi. I asked you to come here because Shui didn't understand some of the contents of the contract. You can teach her again. Qiao Yi was used to hearing Lu Linjie's cold voice towards her. She walked to Jiang Sheshue's side and said softly, Miss Jiang, if there is anything you don't know, you can ask me directly. In order to ease Jiang Sheshue's nervousness, Lu Linjie deliberately gave up his desk. Jiang Sheshue handed the contract to Qiao Yi. After browsing it, Qiao Yi understood the problem. Ms. Jiang, this may be your first time dealing with a contract. It's normal for you to feel uncomfortable. Qiao Yi pointed out all the basic mistakes. In places like these, the wording is not quite accurate. Qiao Yi picked up a pen and circled all the wrong places. Jiang Sheshue kept asking questions earnestly. She humbly said, Secretary Qiao, this is my first time using this. There are some specialized terms that I don't quite understand. I hope you can give me some advice. Qiao Yi has always been serious about his work and tends to be quite blunt when dealing with issues. Ms. Jiang, I think you should buy some professional materials. Professional terms must be used in the contract. Otherwise, if the contract is not rigorous, it will affect the reputation of our Lu Group. Jiang Sheshue nodded after hearing this. Qiao Yi directly wrote the name of the professional book on the paper. Ms. Jiang, you can read these books first to increase your knowledge of professional terms, which will make it easier to handle contracts. Jiang Xieshua looked at Qiao Yi with gratitude. Thank you, Secretary Qiao. Let's go through the contract now. Please help me point out the problems. Qiao Yi did not refuse. After all, she needed Jiang Xieshua to take over her job after she left. She took out a few simpler contracts and handed them to Jiang Xieshua. Half an hour later, Jiang Xieshua finally finished processing the first contract. Secretary Qiao, take a look. Qiao Yi took it, glanced through it, and frowned. According to the way she taught just now, even if Jiang Xieshua couldn't learn it 100%, she would at least learn more than half of it. But the document in front of her was completely at the beginner's level. Unable to perform the duties of a secretary. There are grammatical errors in these places, and this, professional terminology cannot be described in this way. Qiao Yi has always been very strict about his work, and he would unconsciously emphasize his tone when speaking. Jiang Xieshua had never been treated like this before, and she couldn't accept it emotionally for a while. But in order not to be looked down upon by Lu Linjie, she still made the corrections reluctantly and started to work on the second document. Qiao Yi stood by and accompanied him. After Jiang Xieshua processed the second document, she handed it to Qiao Yi. Qiao Yi simply flipped through it and found that the same problems still existed in the contract. It seems that Jiang Xieshua didn't study hard at all. Qiao Yi said patiently, the problems in these places are the same as those in the previous contract. If you don't understand, I can explain it to you several times, but you must remember it carefully. At first, Jiang Xieshua could still endure it, but now she couldn't control her feeling of grievance. There was a hint of tears in her voice. I'm so sorry, Secretary Qiao. I'm too stupid to understand what you're teaching. Before Qiao Yi could say anything, he heard a voice coming from the sofa. Lu Linjie looked at Qiao Yi coldly. He did not participate in the process. But after hearing Jiang Xieshua's slightly tearful voice, he thought that Qiao Yi was dissatisfied with Jiang Xieshua and took his anger out on her. Qiao Yi, what's your attitude? The man's warning voice sounded. At this moment, Qiao Yi felt like a dumb person eating bitter herbs. She clearly meant well in teaching, but was misunderstood by Lu Linjie. It is conceivable how terrible she is in his heart. Jiang Xieshua felt that all this was her fault, and even caused Qiao Yi to be scolded. Mr. Lu, I was too stupid. It has nothing to do with Secretary Qiao. Don't blame her. Lu Linjie comforted Jiang Xieshua in a soft voice. Axu, this is your first contact. It's not easy to achieve this. She has been in this position for so long. If she can't teach a student well, then it means she is not capable enough. Lack of ability. Then why send her to Zhu Ronghan? Why must she get the contract within a month? In order to coax Jiang Xieshua, Lu Linjie even said such insincere words. Seeing that Qiao Yi's face was not looking good, Lu Linjie reminded him in a deep voice, Secretary Qiao, Axu is different from you. You have to be patient in teaching. If you fail to teach well, you know the consequences. Hearing this, Qiao Yi lowered his eyes, with a look of loneliness in his eyes. Lu Linjie was threatening her. Her situation forced her to compromise. I understand, Mr. Lu. Qiao Yi suppressed his emotions and began to explain the key points of the contract to Jiang Xieshua again. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, Mr. Lu didn't mean to target you. Jiang Xieshua explained to Qiao Yi in a low voice. If I wasn't so stupid, you wouldn't have been scolded by President Lu. Qiao Yi did not respond to Jiang Xieshua's apology, but opened his laptop. Ms. Jiang, here are some organized documents. If you don't mind, I'll send you the information I summarized before. Jiang Xieshua was very happy after hearing this, her eyes curved and she said, Thank you, Secretary Qiao. But after Jiang Xieshua received the documents, she found that there were some things she still could not understand. Qiao Yi could see that she really wanted to learn, so he could only explain it to her word by word. You may find these professional terms unfamiliar now, but once you become more proficient in them, you will be able to use them flexibly. Jiang Xieshua has been trying very hard to understand, but after all, she has never been exposed to it before, so she can only start learning from the most basic. Qiao Yi understood how much Lu Linjie valued Jiang Xieshua, and taught her even more attentively. Just consider it as repaying Lu Linjie's kindness. 7 o'clock in the evening. Lu Linjie walked up to Jiang Xieshua and said, Shui, it's time to go. Jiang Xieshua shook her head with a firm look in her eyes, Boss Lu, my comprehension ability is too poor. Let me learn from Secretary Qiao for a while. Lu Linjie snatched the folder in front of Jiang Xieshue. You've worked hard enough. Secretary Qiao spent even longer studying than you did, so you don't have to feel stupid. After Lu Linjie finished speaking, he looked at Qiao Yi with a neutral look. He was signaling Qiao Yi to answer out loud. After hearing this, Jiang Xieshue looked up at Qiao Yi. Qiao Yi could only nod obediently. That's right, Miss Jiang, you will learn all of this sooner or later. Chapter 11 on. But I think Secretary Qiao is pretty good right now. Jiang Xieshue's words reminded Qiao Yi of the past. At that time, she had no idea about the profession of secretary. But because he was parachuted in, no colleague in the company was willing to come forward to help. After all, who would waste their time helping someone who knows nothing? Not only does she have to spend a lot of time studying every day, but she also has to be prepared to please Lu Linjie at all times. After all, Lu Linjie never felt sorry for her. But even with all their hard work, Qiao Yi still fantasized about a different ending in his heart. She thought that since she had been with Lu Linjie for so long, he would eventually treat her differently. But until that night, when she heard Lu Linjie's gentle voice, she realized that all this was just her wishful thinking. Qiao Yi also gradually recognized his own reality. But if you think about it carefully, she gave up all her self-esteem and face in exchange for a slight chance of survival. How could someone like her be worthy of a princely favor like Lu Linjie? Just when Qiao Yi was distracted, Lu Linjie persuaded Jiang Xieshue to take a rest in a gentle tone. You've already studied for a whole day. Let's go eat first, and we can study the rest tomorrow. After hearing this, Jiang Xieshue turned around and apologized to Qiao Yi. I'm so sorry, Secretary Qiao, I wasted so much of your time today. If you don't mind, why don't you have dinner with us? Qiao Yi subconsciously shook her head and refused. Having dinner with them would only make her feel uncomfortable. Lu Linjie's eyes were filled with emotions. He whispered, Secretary Qiao still has work to do. Don't bother with her. Then, his voice became gentle again, be good and listen, I'll take you to dinner. After hearing this, Jiang Xieshue had no choice but to follow Lu Linjie and leave. Qiao Yi watched the two of them leave the office and breathed a sigh of relief. She returned to her workstation and dealt with the backlog of work. On the other side, Lu Linjie brought Jiang Xieshue to the restaurant. Axu, see if there is anything you like to eat. Jiang Xieshue held the menu, hesitant. After an inner struggle, she finally expressed her dissatisfaction. Secretary Qiao didn't finish her work because of me. Don't treat her like that. Lu Linjie looked at Jiang Xieshue with a smile in his eyes. I'll pay attention next time. Jiang Xieshue nodded with satisfaction after hearing this. After dinner, Lu Linjie sent Jiang Xieshue back. An hour later. After finishing his work, Qiao Yi wanted to leave, but he felt a little unwell because he hadn't eaten for a long time. She took out a candy from the drawer, tore open the wrapper, and put it in her mouth. The sweetness spread in her mouth. Qiao Yi was about to get up and leave, but the moment he stood up, the office fell into darkness. There's a power outage. Qiao Yi frowned and took out her cell phone, but the screen didn't respond no matter how she pressed it. She murmured in a low voice, did it shut down due to power outage? Really? Sometimes when people are unlucky, even drinking cold water will cause food to get stuck in their teeth. Relying on his memory, Qiao Yi left in the dark. Just as she was about to reach the corridor, she suddenly bumped into a broad embrace. When Qiao Yi smelled that familiar scent, he felt inexplicably at ease. Mr. Lu. As soon as Qiao Yi spoke, he was pulled to the wall by the man's powerful strength. She didn't have time to react at all. The man in front of her kissed her red lips directly, domineeringly and forcefully. After being stunned for a few seconds, Qiao Yi pushed Lu Linjie away. Boss Lu, this is the company. It was rare for her to shout out loud. In the darkness, Lu Linjie still pinched Qiao Yi's chin accurately. Have I been too indulgent towards you during this period? Huh. The man's tone was neither cold nor hot, but particularly creepy. His hands were very strong, and Qiao Yi was in so much pain that tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Now that Qiao Yi couldn't see Lu Linjie's expression, the fear in his heart eased a little. She said softly, Boss Lu, didn't you go to dinner with Miss Jiang? Why did you come back? Lu Linjie didn't say anything, but his terrifying gaze was fixed on Qiao Yi. Qiao Yi, you've become bolder recently. After saying that, the man firmly held Qiao Yi's head with both hands, held her delicate lips with his slightly cool thin lips, and began to attack the city. Qiao Yi pushed him away violently. Lu Linjie's face suddenly darkened, and a dangerous aura lingered around her, enveloping her. Qiao Yi's breath was choked, and he bit his lip and said forcefully, "Mr. Lu, I told you before that you already have a girlfriend, and we should keep our distance." "Qiao Yi, you think too highly of yourself." Lu Linjie raised a mocking smile. "As a lover, you have no right to refuse." Qiao Yi's whole body was stiff, and his heart seemed to be twisted by a hemp rope, tightly wrapped around it, causing him to feel suffocated and painful. "Mr. Lu, I am no longer your secretary and cannot provide you with any services. I have been given to Zhu Ronghan by you, haven't I?" Hearing this, Lu Linjie sneered. The roses he raised eventually grew thorns. "Okay. Then take him down as soon as possible." Lu Linjie returned to his calm and composed self and turned away. It took Qiao Yi a long time to recover after everyone left. After recovering from his composure, Qiao Yi groped along the wall and slowly moved forward. The pain spread from the knee to their whole body. Qiao Yi frowned, not knowing where he had bumped into. He only felt a warm current flowing through his knees. "Bleeding?" Qiao Yi endured the pain and walked quickly downstairs to their company building. She leaned against the streetlight and saw the wound on her knee clearly. Blood was oozing out. "I have to go to the pharmacy to buy medicine and treat the wound first." Qiao Yi walked to the side of the road and wanted to stop a car to leave, but he heard a familiar voice. "Miss Qiao." Qiao Yi looked in the direction of the voice and saw Zhu Ronghan, who had been standing next to him. "Mr. Zhu, why are you here?" Qiao Yi asked in confusion. Zhu Ronghan smiled and responded in a gentle voice, "I just went to the company to take care of some things. The nanny said you haven't returned yet, so I came here to try my luck. I didn't expect you to work so late. It's a good opportunity for us to go home together." Qiao Yi was not pretentious. She already lived with Zhu Ronghan, so she nodded in agreement. Zhu Ronghan walked in front. Qiao Yi's knees hurt so much that he could only limp along to keep up with Zhu Ronghan's pace. Soon, the gap between the two people widened. Noticing the empty space beside him, Zhu Ronghan paused and looked back, only to see Qiao Yi limping. The light was dim just now and he didn't notice Qiao Yi's knees. "Now you can see at a glance that her knee is injured." The man frowned. "Miss Qiao, why didn't you tell me you were hurt?" Qiao Yi subconsciously wanted to block his knee. "Mr. Zhu, it's just a minor scratch, it's okay. Wait here for a moment." After Zhu Ronghan finished speaking, he strode to the front of the car and took out the emergency medicine box he had prepared earlier. Then he bandaged Qiao Yi's wound. "Mr. Zhu, why do you still carry a medicine box with you?" Chapter 12 Discussion. Zhu Ronghan looked at Qiao Yi gently. "Now that you are around me, I need to pay more attention." Qiao Yi was quite surprised. Zhu Ronghan is surprisingly so meticulous. Whether it was due to her upbringing or not, she was touched deep down. "Thank you, Mr. Zhu." Qiao Yi was very grateful. After Zhu Ronghan put the medicine box back in the car, he turned around and saw Qiao Yi limping towards him. He walked over quickly and picked up Qiao Yi. "Mr. Zhu, I can actually walk by myself." Zhu Ronghan knew that Qiao Yi was embarrassed, so he pursed his lips and smiled. "Miss Qiao, it is not a gentleman's behavior to see you get hurt but not come forward to help." Knowing that men are always well educated, Qiao Yi stopped being pretentious. It's a good opportunity to promote relationship. Not far away, there was a black Porsche parked on the side of the road. Lu Linjie held the steering wheel with both hands, his black eyes fixed on the two people not far away, and a chill emanated from the surroundings. He didn't start the car until Zhu Ronghan drove away. On their way back to the villa, Zhu Ronghan kept controlling the speed of the car, fearing that Qiao Yi's wound would be torn. "Ms. Qiao, I see your wound is quite serious. Why don't you go to the hospital for treatment?" Qiao Yi heard the worry in Zhu Ronghan's tone. She smiled slightly. "It's okay, it doesn't hurt now." The next moment, her stomach rumbled. After hearing this, Zhu Ronghan did not expose her, but took her to a Japanese restaurant first. "Mr. Zhu, why don't we just go back? I've been busy dealing with things at the company today and haven't had time to eat. If you don't mind, can you eat with me?" Qiao Yi understood that Zhu Ronghan was taking care of her self-esteem. There are people taking care of him in his daily life, so how could he forget to eat? Good. Half an hour later. They then set off to return to the villa area. After getting off the car, Zhu Ronghan said gentlemanly, "Miss Qiao, you are not able to move easily, let me help you get in." Qiao Yi didn't act pretentiously. He nodded and put his hand on Zhu Ronghan's arm. Secretary Qiao. Jiang Xieshue was waiting for Lu Linjie at the door, but before Lu Linjie arrived, she saw Qiao Yi and Zhu Ronghan first. She saw the gauze on Qiao Yi's knee and asked with concern, "Secretary Qiao, what's wrong with you?" "I accidentally fell down at work." Jiang Xieshue's eyes instantly turned red with guilt. "I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, it's all because of me that I kept you busy this afternoon. Otherwise, if you had gone home earlier from get off work, this wouldn't have happened." Qiao Yi shook her head and said, "Ms. Jiang, I got hurt because I was not careful when I walked. It has nothing to do with you." After hearing what Qiao Yi said, Jiang Xieshue felt relieved. "But Miss Jiang, why are you still standing at the door so late?" Jiang Xieshue smiled obediently. "Just now, after Mr. Lu sent me back, he said he left something behind and had to go back to the company to get it. I thought he should be back soon, so I waited for him at the door." "Secretary Qiao, did you see Mr. Lu when you came back?" She stared at Qiao Yi without blinking, but Qiao Yi remained calm and shook his head. "No, Miss Jiang, if you're worried, why not give Mr. Lu a call?" Jiang Xieshue pursed her lips and spoke in a gentle voice, "I called him several times just now, but none of them, Mr. Lu." She caught a glimpse of Lu Linjie from the corner of her eye and threw herself into his arms. "Boss Lu, you're finally back." Secretary Qiao's knee was injured. "It's all my fault for being so stupid. If I had learned it faster, she could have gone home from get off work earlier." Jiang Xieshue's voice was sweet and cute, with a hint of coquettishness. Lu Linjie glanced at Qiao Yi's knees. His expression was stern and his dark eyes were filled with dark currents. Qiao Yi's hand was still on Zhu Ronghan's arm. But this time, she met Lu Linjie's gaze openly. The man's face was instantly covered with a layer of frost. "Mr. Zhu, let's go back," Qiao Yi said lightly. She didn't want to stay here any longer. "Okay." Zhu Ronghan smiled faintly and looked at Lu Linjie. "Mr. Lu, we'll be leaving now." The two of them looked like a couple. Lu Linjie nodded slightly, his knuckles turning a little white. Zhu Ronghan helped Qiao Yi in. His gentle voice would ring out from time to time, reminding her to be careful on the steps. Jiang Xieshue watched their actions and couldn't help but sigh. It seems that Secretary Qiao and President Zhu get along well. Lu Linjie didn't say anything, turned around and walked into the villa, and Jiang Xieshue hurriedly followed him in. In the villa, "Miss Qiao." Just as Qiao Yi was about to go upstairs, Zhu Ronghan called out to her. She paused and turned back. "Mr. Zhu, is there anything else? There is a party this weekend and I need to bring a female companion. If you don't mind, could you accompany me as my female companion?" "Of course you have the right to refuse." The man spoke sincerely. "Accompany Zhu Ronghan to the banquet? Does this mean that he is beginning to consider himself one of their own?" Qiao Yi would definitely not let go of such an opportunity. She smiled and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Zhu, you helped me so much before, and I'm just worried that I can't find a chance to repay you." Seeing Qiao Yi agreed, the gentle smile on Zhu Ronghan's face deepened. "I will arrange everything by then, Miss Qiao just needs to be on time." "Good." Qiao Yi went up to the second floor and took out Zhu Ronghan's information and read it again. "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win every battle." The next day, after Zhu Ronghan and Qiao Yi finished their breakfast, they left to get down to business. After a while, Zhu Ronghan's assistant came over. There were quite a few people following him. They all held dresses and jewelry boxes in their hands, lined up and stood in front of Qiao Yi. "Ms. Qiao, this is the dress and jewelry that Mr. Zhu prepared for you. You can try them on and see which one suits you best," the assistant said with a smile. Faced with such a grand ceremony, Qiao Yi was somewhat flattered. In the past, when she accompanied Lu Linjie to banquets, Lu Linjie had chosen the clothes for her. She had no choice. Qiao Yi raised his eyes and looked at the assistant. "Okay, thank you for your hard work." She tried on dresses all day and finally chose a blue fishtail dress. Saturday, Qiao Yi took Zhu Ronghan's car to the banquet. "I heard that Zhu Ronghan will be attending the banquet with a female companion today." I heard that Mr. Lu's secretary has been sent to Zhu Ronghan. She's always been great at climbing into bed. These words were heard clearly by Qiao Yi, who just came in. When she appeared at the banquet with her arm around Zhu Ronghan, everyone was stunned for a moment. She is already a beauty with stunning appearance in Beijing, and when she dresses up carefully, she immediately stuns everyone. No wonder Mr. Zhu fell in love with her. She has grown into such an alluring and charming girl. If I were a man, I would want her too. Chapter 13 Bullying. Boss Lu is really willing to send her away. What's there to be reluctant about giving to a lover? Benefits are definitely more important than beauty. But Qiao Yi is really shameless. His reputation is so bad, but he still appears here without changing his expression. If it were me, I would definitely not be able to show up. The voices of discussion at the scene all fell into Qiao Yi's ears. Qiao Yi had long been accustomed to other people's disdainful attitude towards her. But Zhu Ronghan is still around. She turned her head and glanced at Zhu Ronghan. You are all talking about my female companion so openly. Do you think I, Zhu Ronghan, have bad taste? Zhu Ronghan still had a gentle smile on his face, but the aura he exuded was chilling. Everyone looked at each other in silence. Qiao Yi didn't expect Zhu Ronghan to stand up to defend her. When she first appeared next to Lu Linjie, what those people said was even more unpleasant than it is now. But at that time Lu Linjie did not speak out to defend her. She had long since become as strong as a rock and as strong as iron. These words could not hurt her. But at this moment, Qiao Yi's nose felt sore, and she whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Zhu." Zhu Ronghan smiled apologetically. "Ms. Qiao, if you hadn't come, you wouldn't have heard these words." Qiao Yi shook his head. "It's okay, Mr. Zhu. Don't pay attention to them." Afterwards, Zhu Ronghan had some business to discuss, so Qiao Yi found a place to stay. She drank a few glasses of fruit wine and felt a little drunk, so she went to the bathroom to wash her face to sober up. Unexpectedly, I met some of Lu Linjie's sisters in the bathroom. "Oh, isn't this Mr. Zhu's female companion today? Why doesn't Mr. Lu want you anymore? Are you looking for new prey? Isn't it too humble to live like this? If you ask me, a bitch like you should get out of our circle, so as not to tarnish our reputation." Qiao Yi frowned and didn't want to get entangled with them. After all, she was Zhu Ronghan's female companion today. If the matter gets out of hand, it would be Zhu Ronghan who would lose face. It is better to have less trouble than more. Qiao Yi wanted to turn around and leave, but was stopped by this group of people. "You can't stand it after I said a few words to you? Are you going to complain to Mr. Zhu?" Qiao Yi ignored him, so how could the other party tolerate Qiao Yi's disregard? "Qiao Yi, are you mute?" As he said that, the other party raised his hand and was about to slap him. The next second, her arm was grabbed by someone. The man wanted to get angry, but after seeing that it was Jiang Xiexue, his anger immediately dissipated. After all, this is Lu Linjie's public girlfriend. Jiang Xiexue just looked them up and down and turned to look at Qiao Yi. "Secretary Qiao, are they your friends?" Lu Linjie was wandering around the banquet, but when she received the message from her best friend, she hurried to the bathroom. I happened to hear their conversation. A group of people looked at Jiang Xiexue with amusement, not knowing whether she was really stupid or just pretending. Instead of wasting time here, it is better to get things straight. We dare not be friends with Secretary Qiao. After all, a woman like her who flirts with other men might steal my man away one day. Jiang Xiexue looked a little embarrassed. Secretary Qiao is not that kind of person. You can't bully her just because you have more people. As she spoke, Jiang Xiexue protected Qiao Yi behind her. One of the girls liked Lu Linjie before, but now she feels so disgusted when she sees Jiang Xiexue. Why does Miss Jiang want to step forward to protect her? You have to think clearly. Mr. Lu treated her differently before. Jiang Xiexue frowned and muttered, "This is between me and Mr. Lu." Lu Linjie, who walked in, heard what she said and found it ridiculous. "Ms. Jiang, we are doing this for your own good. Otherwise, if Qiao Yi and Lu Linjie rekindle their old relationship someday, you will be the one kicked aside." Lu Linjie sneered. Jiang Xiexue, however, looked as if she didn't understand. "Ms. Wu has a fiancé now, so you should be careful with your words. If someone with ulterior motives spreads it, it will affect your reputation." Lu Linjie's eyes turned fierce. "This idiot," she said it so bluntly. It was really ridiculous that Jiang Sheshue could pretend to be indifferent and persuade her. Since Miss Jiang is going to stand on Qiao Yi's side, don't blame us for not reminding you. Besides, you're really in the way standing here. It would be bad if I hurt you by mistake. After saying that, Wu Lingxian reached out and pushed Jiang Sheshue away. Jiang Sheshue was caught off guard and stumbled backwards. Seeing that she was about to fall, Qiao Yi quickly grabbed her hand. Jiang Sheshue stood firmly, but Qiao Yi did not and sprained his ankle. Secretary Qiao, how are you? Jiang Sheshue asked anxiously. Qiao Yi looked at his swollen ankle and whispered, I'm fine. But your ankle, wait, I'll go find it. Having said that, Jiang Sheshue walked outside, but was stopped by several of Wu Lingxian's sisters. Ms. Jiang, how about we be friends? As she spoke, Wu Lingxian moved closer to Jiang Sheshue. Qiao Yi frowned and shouted, you better think about the consequences. She is Lu Linjie's girlfriend. If something happens to her here, can you bear Lu Linjie's wrath? Her words completely frightened these people. Even Wu Lingxian, who was standing by, seemed a little hesitant at this moment. Her parents gave her specific instructions before she left. We know you don't like Lu Linjie's female companion, but now he loves Jiang Sheshue very much, you can't offend her. After a few people looked at each other, Wu Lingxian nodded at them and made way for Jiang Sheshue. Jiang Sheshue came out of the bathroom and hurried to find Lu Linjie. It was not until the moment she saw Lu Linjie that Jiang Sheshue could no longer bear her grievance. Seeing Jiang Sheshue's slightly red eyes, Lu Linjie's dark eyes flashed a bit of coldness. What's wrong? Someone bullied you. Jiang Sheshue threw herself into Lu Linjie's arms sadly and told him everything that had just happened. Secretary Qiao is still being blocked in the bathroom by them. From what I can see from Wu Lingxian's expression, she won't let her go easily. Jiang Sheshue became more and more anxious as she spoke, fearing that something might happen to Qiao Yi. Mr. Lu, can you please rescue her? She's a girl, it would be bad if her reputation was ruined. Lu Linjie concealed the dark tide in his eyes and said soothingly, I will send someone to take care of it. I will take you back first. Jiang Sheshue bit her lip and said, Boss Lu, can you send someone over now? That group of people came with great force. Secretary Qiao sprained her foot while trying to protect me. I'm worried about her. Jiang Sheshue was interrupted by Lu Linjie before she could finish her words. Axu, Secretary Qiao will handle it herself, let's go back first. Seeing Lu Linjie's gloomy face, Jiang Sheshue could only nod and agree, and follow him away. In the bathroom, Qiao Yi's eyes kept glancing towards the door. What? Secretary Qiao really thought Jiang Sheshue would go and get help for you. Chapter 14 Gambling. Even if she really goes to ask for help, do you think Lu Linjie will come to save you? You've been tired of him playing with you for a long time. Wu Lingxian approached Qiao Yi step by step, glaring at her with anger in her eyes. How dare a little bitch like you get involved with Xiao Mingchen? Do you really think I'm dead? There is only one thing in this world that I, Wu Lingxian, don't want. No one dares to take the initiative to mess with the things that belong to me. Qiao Yi frowned, Ms. Wu, I have no contact with Brother Xiao anymore. Last time after I went back, Xiao Mingchen had a big fight with me because of you. Do you think I would believe you too if you didn't order anything? Wu Lingxian gnashed her teeth and said, take off her clothes for me, so that the people outside can feast their eyes on her. Otherwise, it will be boring to just attend the banquet. She felt very happy when she thought of Qiao Yi being naked in front of everyone. As soon as she finished speaking, the sisters around Wu Lingxian immediately took action. Qiao Yi stepped back and looked at them warily. If you dare to mess around, I won't let you go. Wu Lingxian smiled indifferently. You think I'm afraid of you? As she spoke, Wu Lingxian reached out to take off Qiao Yi's dress. Qiao Yi's eyes turned fierce and he used his arm to push Wu Lingxian's hand away. Wu Lingxian cursed out loud in pain, bitch, you dare to resist. I will definitely teach you a lesson this time. Her eyes were filled with resentment, and she raised her hand, ready to slap Qiao Yi in the face. Qiao Yi grabbed Wu Lingxian's hand. I am Zhu Ronghan's female companion today. If you dare to touch me again, what do you think Zhu Ronghan will do? She is gambling. I bet that the Hu family wouldn't dare to provoke Zhu Ronghan. Qiao Yi, do you think I will be fooled by you? At this moment, a voice sounded at the door. Excuse me, is Miss Qiao Yi here? Everyone turned their eyes to the door. A female manager in work clothes walked in. Qiao Yi said, "It's me." The female manager walked over and wanted to take Qiao Yi away. Wu Linjie was furious at this moment, and she shouted, "Can't you see I'm teaching someone a lesson? Get out." The female manager said calmly, "Ms. Hua, Mr. Zhu is waiting for Miss Qiao at the door. Mr. Zhu is our honored guest. We cannot offend him." The implication was that Wu Linjie should release the person. Wu Linjie frowned. Although Zhu Ronghan has just returned to China, his family background is prominent. This is not someone that Wu family can afford to offend. Wu Linjie thought about what her grandmother had told her. You can do whatever you want in the Wu family, but when you go out, you must remember not to cause trouble for the Wu family. Zhu Ronghan's mother's family is a Japanese family with unfathomable family strength. When you see him, try to please him. Thinking of this, Wu Linjie pursed her lips unwillingly. "Qiao Yi, you're lucky this time, but if you dare to provoke Xia Mingchen again, even if I can't kill you, I'll skin you alive." After she made these harsh remarks, she left the bathroom with her sisters. Qiao Yi's tense body finally relaxed. Her legs felt weak and she almost lost her balance. The female manager quickly stepped forward to support Qiao Yi and asked with concern, "Miss Qiao, are you okay?" Qiao Yi shook his head, holding onto the sink, and after a long pause, he said, "Thank you. Mr. Zhu is waiting for you outside." "Okay, I'll get ready and go out." A few minutes later, Qiao Yi came out of the bathroom. She immediately saw Zhu Ronghan standing not far away. "I'm sorry to trouble you, Mr. Zhu." Seeing that Qiao Yi was safe and sound, Zhu Ronghan smiled gently. "I'm sorry, Miss Qiao. It was my negligence that allowed them to take advantage of me." Qiao Yi smiled and said, "Mr. Zhu, this is not your problem. I also want to thank you for appearing and saving me, otherwise." Given Wu Linjie's personality, it is really possible that he would strip her dress and then throw her out. A hint of coldness flashed across Zhu Ronghan's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. He saw Qiao Yi's red and swollen ankle and asked worriedly, "How did you get hurt again?" Qiao Yi smiled slightly, "I twisted my ankle accidentally, but it's not a big deal." Then, she said tiredly, "Mr. Zhu, I want to go back first." "I'll take you back." "No need, I can go back by myself." Qiao Yi shook his head, not wanting to delay Zhu Ronghan's work. Zhu Ronghan saw what she was thinking and smiled, "I have already dealt with my affairs, and I was just thinking about going back." "Oh well." Qiao Yi gave in, and the two returned to their villa together. 2 days later, when Qiao Yi's sprain had almost healed, he went to Lu's group. She is about to start handing over her work to Jiang Xiexue. "Secretary Qiao, you haven't come to work these 2 days, are you okay? That night I asked Mr. Lu to come and rescue you, but he had important things to deal with and was delayed. By the time he sent someone over, you were no longer in the bathroom." Jiang Xiexue said with a guilty look on her face, "Secretary Qiao, did they?" Looking at the little girl's worried eyes, Qiao Yi just smiled. "No, Mr. Zhu arrived in time that night and saved me." Jiang Xiexue breathed a sigh of relief. She patted her chest and said, "That's great. I've been worried about you these past 2 days. I'm glad you're okay." Qiao Yi smiled politely. "If you really care about her, you should at least send her a message to ask." But there is none. "Ms. Jiang, let's start the handover." As he spoke, Qiao Yi began to open the file archives and taught Jiang Xiexue bit by bit. Jiang Xiexue listened carefully, but after a while, she began to feel sleepy. "Secretary Qiao, why don't you take a rest and I can take care of it myself?" She spoke coquettishly. Seeing that Jiang Xiexue didn't want to learn, Qiao Yi smiled helplessly. "Then take a look for yourself first." At this time, Lu Linjie's chief assistant Shenlin appeared in front of the two. "Secretary Qiao, Mr. Lu wants to see you." "Lu Linjie is looking for her? What do you want to see her for?" Qiao Yi nodded slightly, lowered his head and said to Jiang Xiexue, "Please take a look at these documents. I have sorted out the rest and sent them to your email. If there's anything you don't understand, ask me when I come back." Jiang Xiexue nodded obediently. "Secretary Qiao, don't worry, I will study hard." Hearing this, Qiao Yi smiled knowingly and left. She took the elevator to the top floor. Lu Linjie likes quietness, and he is the only office on the top floor. Qiao Yi knocked on the door, and after getting the consent from the person inside, he pushed the door open and walked in. "Mr. Lu, you're looking for me." Lu Linjie didn't even raise his head, just stared at the computer in front of him. Qiao Yi could only wait quietly. After a while, Lu Linjie looked up at her, his fingers flickering across the table. How far have you and Lu Linjie developed? The man's words were cold and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. Chapter 15 Catch. Don't worry, Mr. Lu, the contract will definitely be signed within a month. Qiao Yi moved his sprained foot without leaving any trace, and it still hurt a little. After get off work, she will rub it with some medicated wine. Well, speed up the process, otherwise, you know it. Lu Linjie spoke coldly. He took the pen in his hand and twirled it around. These hands seemed to be born to hold pens. She looked away, and heard the threat in his words, and her nose suddenly felt sore. Got it. If there's nothing else, I'll go down and continue teaching Miss Jiang. She turned around and looked in Lu Linjie's direction, her back looking very resolute. Etc. There was no emotion in the man's voice. Boss Lu, do you have any other instructions? Qiao Yi's attitude was polite and distant, which was what a subordinate should have. But this shouldn't be the attitude towards Lu Linjie. Oh. Lu Linjie stood up, raised his long legs and walked towards her. The two of them were getting closer and closer, and it was no longer a normal distance. Qiao Yi quickly took a step back. Mr. Lu. She took several steps back until her back was against the wall. Lu Linjie lifted Qiao Yi's chin with his hand, his eyes were deep and unfathomable. The woman was forced to look up at him. Next second. The man's voice sounded slightly cold. Is Zhu Ronghan's technique better or mine? Qiao Yi's eyes widened, feeling humiliated. She turned her head and broke free from Lu Linjie's hand. She said calmly, Mr. Lu, this is my private question, I don't have to answer it. Don't test my patience. Qiao Yi met the man's gaze. There really was no warmth in those eyes. I've seen Lu Linjie being gentle, but only towards Jiang Xiaoxue. It turns out that the cold iceberg also has a gentle side. Xiaoxue suppressed the strangeness in her heart and took a deep breath. Mr. Zhu is not the kind of person you think. He is a very nice person. Don't you think about who you are? You are just a plaything. How dare you talk to me like this? Somehow, after Qiao Yi finished saying this, the air pressure around Lu Linjie became lower. You're very protective of him. Don't tell me you're in love with him. Lu Linjie used a declarative sentence. Qiao Yi was very grateful to Zhu Ronghan. But she knew very well that with her status, she was not qualified to talk about love. Mr. Zhu is a very nice person. I also hope that Mr. Lu won't think too much about it. No one will love me with my identity. Qiao Yi looked straight at Lu Linjie. She did not shy away from the question. But when Lu Linjie decided to give her to Zhu Ronghan, didn't he expect this result? Before Qiao Yi could react, Lu Linjie kissed her domineeringly and forcefully. Qiao Yi was stunned and struggled hard to break free. Lu Linjie seemed impatient. He clamped her hands together and tasted the woman's lips more fiercely. What did he think of her as? Just a toy to vent his desires. Tears of humiliation flowed from Qiao Yi's eyes. Jiang Xiaoxue's face flashed through her mind, and she instantly came to her senses and pushed Lu Linjie away. Lu Linjie didn't give Qiao Yi a chance to break free. He rubbed his hand to her back, skillfully touched the bra button, and then unhooked the bra with one hand. Boss Lu, this is in the office, and we. Before he could finish his words, Lu Linjie domineeringly grabbed Qiao Yi and threw him onto the sofa. Then he stood up and walked forward. Lu Linjie's actions were domineering and powerful, and Qiao Yi was completely powerless to resist. Just as we were about to reach the last step, there was a knock on the door. The two of them woke up together, and Lu Linjie regained his sanity. He got off Qiao Yi with a gloomy face, but showed no intention of opening the door. Lu Linjie glanced at her coldly. Put on your clothes before you go out. This is because I'm afraid Jiang Xiaoxue will misunderstand. Then why do you still want to do this with her? Qiao Yi straightened his clothes with a pale face. Lu Linjie had already tied his tie and was sitting at his desk, looking very indifferent. I have already handed over the work to Miss Jiang. Don't worry, Mr. Lu, I will not come to the company again. After Qiao Yi finished speaking, he opened the office door. The person knocking on the door was Jiang Xiaoxue. Xiaoxue saw her nervous expression and understood what was going on. This is because he was afraid that something might happen between her and Lu Linjie. Come to catch an adulterer. Secretary Qiao, I've been waiting downstairs for a long time, but you haven't come back yet. I still have a few things I don't understand. Jiang Xieshue had tears in her eyes and looked very guilty. So I came up to see you myself, Secretary Qiao. What took you so long? The little girl lowered her head and twirled her skirt, and no one could blame her. However, Qiao Yi understood what Jiang Xieshue meant. She forced a smile and looked at Lu Linjie generously. I just told Mr. Lu that I won't be coming to the company after today. I'm a little late because I'm handing over my work. Sorry, Miss Jiang, I kept you waiting for so long. Jiang Xieshue let out a cry, as if she was relieved. She thought she was being very secretive, but was caught by Qiao Yi. Then I'll go first. I'm off work. Qiao Yi passed by Jiang Xieshue directly. After making sure no one saw it, tears of frustration rolled down her eyes. After signing the contract with Zhu Ronghan, she should also break off all ties with Lu Linjie. Boss Lu, Secretary Qiao won't come anymore. I'm still so stupid. I haven't learned anything. Jiang Xieshue sat on the sofa feeling aggrieved. Lu Linjie touched her hair, with no emotion in his eyes. Then I'll call her back and teach you until you learn it. But didn't Secretary Qiao say that he wouldn't come again? The little girl pouted, feeling very aggrieved. I'll take care of it. Just go home today, okay? I'll take you home. The two took the elevator down to the parking lot and Jiang Xieshue sat in the passenger seat. Soon she reached the apartment. Jiang Xieshue blushed and asked expectantly, Boss Lu, don't you want to go up and sit down? Be good, you are still too young. I am afraid of scaring you. Lu Linjie touched her head gently. Hearing these words, Jiang Xieshue's heart was filled with joy. Her mother said that the more a man likes someone, the more reluctant he is to touch her. It seems to be true. Mr. Lu, then go back and be careful. Jiang Xieshue watched the car drive farther and farther away, and went upstairs happily. After the figure disappeared from the rearview mirror, Lu Linjie slammed the steering wheel hard. He looked ahead, not knowing what he was thinking. The bathtub had just been filled with water, and Jiang Xieshue tested the water temperature, which was just right. Ding dong. It's the doorbell. Is that Mr. Lu? Jiang Xieshue spoke tentatively. No one answered, and the doorbell continued to ring. She was ecstatic, her cheeks slightly flushed. She took a look, gritted her teeth and put on the bathrobe. Jiang Xieshue opened the door. Outside the door was an unfamiliar elderly woman. Xu Xiuhua was stunned for a moment, took a few steps back, and made sure that she had not taken the wrong path. Who are you looking for? Jiang Xieshue asked obediently. Chapter 16 Catch. The ripple atmosphere that had just arisen disappeared completely. Oh, no, I'm here to look for Qiao Yi, is she there? Looking for Secretary Qiao? Jiang Xieshue's face was full of apology, and she shook her head. Secretary Qiao doesn't live here, you may have made a mistake. Xu Xiuhua was stunned for a moment, and quickly said, I'm sorry, I'm Qiao Yi's mother, she used to live here, so I remembered it wrong. Jiang Xieshue's wet hair was still dripping water. She shook her head sympathetically and lowered her head to think for a while. Didn't he tell anyone that Qiao Yi and Zhu Ronghan were living together? I don't seem to know where Secretary Qiao lives. Why don't you give her a call? Okay, I'll be leaving first then. Coming out of the luxury apartment, Xu Xiuhua was extremely nervous. She took out her cell phone and called Qiao Yi. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. Mom, what's wrong? Qiao Yi's eyes were red. She had just cried a lot. A fast car passed by quickly and the water almost splashed on her. Did you have a conflict with Mr. Lu? Xu Xiuhua looked embarrassed and uneasy. Qiao Yi's heart tightened. You went to the apartment to find me. Her mother must have met Jiang Xieshue. I don't know if it will cause any misunderstanding. Xu Xiuhua told the story in detail about what had just happened. When I first heard the voice inside, I thought it was you. Qiao Yi understood clearly. I originally wanted to see you and let you go home and lie down. You know the situation at home. Xu Xiuhua looked nervous. You didn't make Mr. Lu angry, did you? You also know the situation at home. Mom. Qiao Yi interrupted her, not wanting her to continue talking. Xu Xiuhua sighed and tried to persuade him earnestly. Mom knows what you've done for the family over the years. Mom understands the situation. It's normal for a man to have several women around him. What's important is where the man's heart is. After a pause, she continued, you have to hold onto Mr. Lu's heart, otherwise how are you going to support this family? It would be great if the Qiao family didn't go bankrupt. Xu Xiuhua has been having the same dream over and over again these days. That's enough, Mom, I get it. Okay, Mom won't say anything. What's going on between you and Mr. Lu? Who is that woman? Who else could it be? The person that Lu Linjie loves the most. Qiao Yi smiled bitterly, said a few perfunctory words, and hung up the phone. After leaving the company, she didn't go anywhere but squatted on the roadside crying. She unlocked her phone and looked at the few contacts she had. There was a message from Zhu Ronghan in the phone. I have something to do tonight, you should go to bed early. Qiao Yi felt warm in his heart, as if he felt at home for the first time. Her appearance is very striking. People were coming and going on the street, and a kind-hearted person came up to ask Qiao Yi if he had encountered any difficulties. She smiled and shook her head, I'm fine, thank you for your concern. After an unknown amount of time, Qiao Yi turned off his phone. She stopped a car and told the address of Zhu Ronghan's villa. After getting off the taxi, Qiao Yi looked tired. Secretary Qiao. Jiang Xieshua stepped forward and took her arm. I've been waiting for you for a long time, where have you been? Qiao Yi thought of the phone call just now and was a little surprised that Jiang Xieshua would appear here. Seeing her puzzled expression, Jiang Xieshua lowered her head and spoke shyly. I was scared to be alone at home, so Mr. Lu agreed to let me come here to accompany him. Qiao Yi frowned slightly. Why explain this to her? Lu Linjie has nothing to do with her anymore. Her most important task now is to get the contract done. The last time I learned about Japanese cuisine, I only knew the basics. But she still wanted to give it a try, as a way of repaying Zhu Ronghan. Although this is not worth mentioning. Seeing that Xiao Shui didn't answer, Jiang Xieshua seemed not to notice. There was a strange flash in her eyes, and then it was replaced by a look of self-blame. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, I didn't know that was the apartment you lived in. I don't know about Mr. Lu's decision. I took away your place to live. Jiang Xieshua had tears in her eyes, and the tears fell like beads from a broken string. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, please scold me. Qiao Yi was slightly stunned. Yes. She decorated the apartment herself. Lived there for 7 years. After 7 years, one will develop feelings even for a dog. But Lu Linjie was so cruel that he turned her into a piece of rotten meat and threw her to anyone at will. Qiao Yi raised her head and finally stopped crying. She smiled and pretended to be puzzled. Ms. Jiang, you misunderstood. I gave it up voluntarily. After hearing this, Jiang Xieshua cried even harder. Qiao Yi felt a little guilty. If Xu Xiuhua hadn't gone to see her today, Jiang Xieshua won't know about this either. At this time, Lu Linjie came over. Axu? Why are you crying? Lu Linjie held Jiang Xieshua in his arms. Qiao Yi's eyes met his, and the man's eyes were cold. She opened her mouth, knowing that he had misunderstood again. Qiao Yi didn't want to argue with him out of spite, so she turned around and prepared to leave. Stop, you're just leaving like that. Apologize. Lu Linjie's tone was full of unwillingness to refuse. The pressure emanating from him made Qiao Yi feel a little breathless. She took a deep breath and spoke slowly. It's none of my business, Mr. Lu. I don't know why Miss Jiang is crying. Oh. I will find excuses. Lu Linjie sneered and gently wiped the tears of the person in his arms with his big hands. He raised his head again, and the meaning was clear. Qiao Yi felt a dull pain in his stomach and was sweating coldly. She just wanted to go back and rest quickly. So she looked at Jiang Xieshua for help, hoping that she could explain. But unexpectedly, Jiang Xieshua seemed to have seen some ferocious beast and tried hard to get into Lu Linjie's arms. Meeting Lu Linjie's terrifying eyes, Qiao Yi closed his eyes in despair. I'm sorry, Miss Jiang. Lu Linjie paused as he wiped away his tears. Mr. Lu, don't blame Secretary Qiao. Jiang Xieshua felt very guilty. I didn't know that the apartment you gave me was where Secretary Qiao lived before, and I stole her place. A layer of frost suddenly covered Lu Linjie's black eyes. Qiao Yi, don't covet what's not yours. Qiao Yi narrowed his eyes. Right. That apartment was never hers. She was never the mistress. My stomach hurts. She doubled over in pain. Cold sweat soaked her back. A gust of wind blew by, and it felt a little chilly. I don't know if it's my heart that's cold or my body that's even colder. Suddenly, a suit was placed on Qiao Yi's shoulders. She looked up in surprise. It was Zhu Ronghan. I'm sorry, Miss Qiao, I see you're not feeling well, do you mind if I help you up? Zhu Ronghan asked in a gentle voice. Seeing Qiao Yi nod, he immediately supported her. Qiao Yi leaned on Zhu Ronghan. I don't feel so uncomfortable anymore. Boss Lu, what are you doing? Somehow. Qiao Yi felt that Zhu Ronghan was a little different today, and his words were less gentle. Lu Linjie's face darkened. My woman has been bullied, Mr. Zhu, I understand. Chapter 17 Good. Zhu Ronghan spoke in a distant tone, his eyes swept over Jiang Xiexue, his expression somewhat displeased. Mr. Lu, Miss Qiao is feeling a little unwell. I'll take her back first. I won't accompany you any longer. Jiang Xiexue's face suddenly turned pale. The Zhu family, even Lu Linjie, has to give some face. Jiang Xiexue's face changed, and then returned to her previous weak appearance. Mr. Lu. Lu Linjie's gaze fell on Qiao Yi's hand on his shoulder, his eyes slightly cold. Zhu Ronghan helped Qiao Yi back to the room. Miss Qiao, what's wrong with you? Mr. Zhu, why are you back so early? The two said in unison. The nanny came in at this time. She brought a cup of hot water and a medicine box. Qiao Yi understood instantly and nodded slightly to the nanny as a way of saying thank you. The nanny put down her things and walked out. Zhu Ronghan handed her the hot water and spread the medicine box in front of them. Look, is there any medicine you need? It's in all kinds of medicines. Qiao Yi glanced over. Stomach medicine is on the top layer. She stretched out her hand and pointed. Yes, this is it. Good. Zhu Ronghan quickly poured out 2 pills for her and placed them in Qiao Yi's palm. Qiao Yi swallowed the medicine into his throat and drank the water slowly. The medicine took effect quickly. She felt that her stomach didn't hurt as much as before. Thank you, Mr. Zhu. Qiao Yi thanked him softly. I feel a little better. You're welcome. I like Miss Qiao very much, so it's my duty to be nice to you. Zhu Ronghan spoke bluntly. Qiao Yi avoided his gaze. She stammered and didn't know what to say. You have a good rest. I'm going to the study. Zhu Ronghan did not press the issue, he gently tucked in the quilt for her, showing his gentlemanly manners. Looking at his departing back, Qiao Yi felt a little drowsy. Soon, I fell asleep. The next day. The sunlight gently fell on Qiao Yi's face. Her long eyelashes fluttered gently and her long hair hung down on the side of the bed. Qiao Yi opened his eyes. She no longer felt any discomfort in her body. Qiao Yi went downstairs and breakfast was already on the dining table. Where is Mr. Zhu? She asked. Ms. Qiao, Mr. Zhu has gone out. He asked you to have a good breakfast. Qiao Yi nodded and picked up the sandwich on the table. Take a closer look. There was also a note next to the sandwich. It says, eat well so you don't get stomachache. Qiao Yi felt warm in his heart and folded the note. Before she could make any move, her cell phone rang suddenly. The caller was Mother Qiao. Qiao Yi pursed her lips and answered the phone. Has my brother's condition worsened again? She guessed. Mom. Qiao Yi was interrupted as soon as he opened his mouth to speak. Qiao's anxious voice came from the other end of the phone. Your brother is missing. I can't find him no matter how hard I look. Maybe he was kidnapped by human traffickers. Qiao was so anxious that she was about to cry and was extremely emotional. Don't worry, why is he missing? Did he go out to play somewhere by himself? No, the nurse said she wanted to take him to see the outside world more. I was confused too. I was distracted when I came out of the hospital and your brother disappeared. Hearing that Qiao couldn't even speak clearly, Qiao Yi spoke to comfort her. Okay, Mom, don't worry, I'll find a way. Have you called the police? Qiao sobbed a few times on the other end of the phone. I reported it, they said your brother had only been missing for a few hours, which was not enough to file a case, but your brother has autism, which makes him different from other children. Qiao Yi frowned, feeling a little anxious. But there's no point in rushing now. Well, you keep looking, and I'll find someone to help. We'll split up. Hey. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Yi paced back and forth in the living room anxiously. Could it be that he was really taken away by human traffickers? Thinking of this, Qiao Yi was so frightened that his face turned pale. She took out her cell phone and found the number she rarely dialed. Hello, the number you dialed is currently unanswered. A call came, but Lu Linjie didn't answer. Qiao Yi made several more calls, but the other party didn't answer. She closed her eyes suddenly. So stupid. He actually asked Lu Linjie for help. What to do? Who else can help? Qiao Yi sat on the ground in a daze, looking at the lawn outside the window, tears rolling down from the corners of his eyes. Miss Qiao, why are you sitting on the ground? The ground is cold. The pronunciation of the word nanny in Chinese is a bit awkward and sounds a bit funny. However, Qiao Yi looked up at the other person as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. Do you have Mr. Ju's phone number? Please give him a call for me, okay? Qiao Yi was in tears and her eyes were red. The nanny quickly picked up the landline next to the sofa and dialed a number. The call was connected quickly. What's wrong? What happened? Ju Ronghan asked the nanny. The nanny quickly handed the phone to Qiao Yi. Mr. Ju, can you help me? Qiao Yi choked up. My brother is lost, can you help me find him? Hearing her cry, Ju Ronghan quickly spoke to comfort her. Ms. Qiao, don't worry. Tell me where your brother is missing and I'll have someone look for him. Good. Qiao Yi quickly sent the address to Ju Ronghan. After Ju Ronghan comforted her again and again, he told her to stay at home and wait for news. The nanny helped her up and let her sit on the sofa. Qiao Yi looked at the lawn outside with empty eyes. Their whole body curled up. What's wrong, Mr. Ju? Did one of your little wives call you? Ju's important partner teased him with a very ambiguous tone. Ju Ronghan did not respond, but asked sincerely. Excuse me, could you please do me a favor and help me find someone? The man was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. Of course you can. Don't worry. My men will find it within an hour. Ju Ronghan knew that the other party was not exaggerating. He smiled politely, thank you very much. Then he told the address and characteristics. After hearing this, the man waved his hand. After nearly half an hour, the man's men came over and whispered a few words. Mr. Ju, you see, I was right, wasn't I? The person has been found and is now back with his family. The man paused, a little curious. I wonder why Mr. Ju would go to so much trouble to find a child. Ju Ronghan had no intention of hiding anything and told the truth. So that's how it is. I heard from my men that the child was sent to their hospital after being found. I helped you find out more about it. The child has autism. Go back and tell the good news. The man patted Ju Ronghan on the shoulder, waved his hand and left. Ju Ronghan returned to their villa and saw Qiao Yi curled up on the sofa, his eyes froze. He went up and touched Qiao Yi's forehead. Fortunately, I don't have a fever. Qiao Yi recovered from his sadness. Seeing that it was Ju Ronghan, she hurriedly held his hand. How is it, Mr. Ju, have you found my brother? They have been found and sent back to my aunt. You can call and ask. Chapter 18 Guard. Qiao Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Ju, thank you, you helped me again. Ju Ronghan held her hand and smiled gently. The two looked at each other, and Qiao Yi quickly let go, apologizing with a slightly red face. I'm sorry, Mr. Ju. Ju Ronghan shook his head and smiled slightly. Does your brother have autism? Yes. Qiao Yi nodded. Do you need my help with the medical expenses? Ju Ronghan asked. No, thank you. You've helped me enough. Afterwards, Qiao Yi called Xu Xiuhua. When she learned that her brother was fine and not injured, her heart finally settled. Who helped you find your brother? Was it Mr. Lu? You should thank him. There was a hint of disappointment in Qiao Yi's eyes. Not him. He didn't even want to answer her calls. The phone was turned off directly. No, okay, Mom, don't worry about it. Just take good care of your brother. After giving his mother a few instructions, Qiao Yi hung up the phone. Xu Xiuhua muttered a few words, not quite believing what she said. Qiao Yi only knows Lu Linjie who has this ability. Who else could it be but him? This kid must have had a quarrel with Mr. Lu. Xu Xiuhua made a decision and took her bag to Lu Group. As soon as she got off the car, she saw Lu Linjie. Xu Xiuhua was about to say hello when she saw from the corner of her eye that there was someone beside Lu Linjie. She quickly hid aside and watched carefully. Mr. Lu, the bag you bought for me is so beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Lu. Jiang Xieshua had a charming look on her face and a newly bought bag on her shoulder. As long as you like it, do you want to buy anything else? Lu Linjie's tone was gentle, a tone Xu Xiuhua had never seen before. It seems that now is not the time to thank Lu Linjie. Xu Xiuhua hid behind a pillar, planning to leave after they left. Mr. Lu, you've been so good to me. I don't know how to repay you. There was a hint of coquettishness in Jiang Xieshua's words. Lu Linjie's eyes were so deep that it was impossible to figure out anything. After being stared at by him for a long time, Jiang Xieshua actually felt a little uneasy. After a long time, just when she was about to lose the stalemate, Lu Linjie turned his gaze and looked in the direction of Xu Xiuhua. This action was not noticed by Jiang Xieshua. Be good, go up first, I have something to take care of. Lu Linjie withdrew his gaze and spoke in a gentle tone. Jiang Xieshua nodded, not noticing anything unusual. She has been a little flattered by being coaxed by such a powerful person. Then I'll go up first. After saying that, Jiang Xieshua, carrying her new bag, pressed the elevator button in a somewhat ostentatious manner. Come out. Lu Linjie stopped Xu Xiuhua, who was about to leave. Now he was the only one standing there. Xu Xiuhua walked towards him with a flattering smile on her face. Mr. Lu, how have you been lately? Xu Xiuhua was a little timid and didn't dare to stand too close to Lu Linjie. Lu Linjie looked at her expressionlessly and sneered, You came here just to tell me this. Qiao Yi asked you to come, right? Lu Linjie's face darkened, but it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Xu Xiuhua waved her hands hurriedly and explained on behalf of her daughter. Mr. Lu, you misunderstood. It's not Qiao Yi. I came here on my own. I want to thank you. Thank him? Lu Linjie sneered with a sarcastic tone and looked down at Xu Xiuhua. Tell Qiao Yi not to play these tricks. She will not lose any of the points she deserves. No, Mr. Lu, Qiao Yi's brother disappeared yesterday. Didn't you ask someone to help? I just wanted to come and thank you. The man was stunned for a rare moment, but quickly recovered. Lu Linjie said slowly, You found the wrong person. The person you should thank is not me. He looked down at his watch, frowned, and said with some impatience, You wasted 5 minutes of my time. Xu Xiuhua looked embarrassed and walked away quickly. Lu Linjie pressed the elevator button expressionlessly. As the elevator door slowly closed, he felt inexplicably irritated. Bite. The elevator door opened. Jiang Xieshua sat among a group of female employees and talked. Lu Linjie glanced at her. The assistant beside him followed him into the office, and the man gave him a look. The other party immediately understood and closed the door. Go check what happened to Qiao Yi's brother. 10 minutes. Lu Linjie's tone was cold, but what he said was impossible to refuse. The assistant was stunned for a moment, and under the man's cold gaze, he quickly dialed the number. Lu Linjie tapped the desk with his fingertips from time to time. At the last few seconds, the assistant hung up the phone, sweating profusely. Boss Lu, I found out that Secretary Qiao's brother went missing yesterday, but he has been found. The assistant looked at the man carefully and didn't continue. He was a little hesitant to say the following words. Lu Linjie narrowed his black eyes slightly and glanced over. The assistant immediately continued, After finding it, they said that Zhu Ronghan asked someone to help. Click. The pen accidentally slipped from the man's hand and fell to the ground. The assistant was sweating profusely. Very good. The air pressure around Lu Linjie suddenly dropped. The assistant carefully picked up the pen and placed it in front of him. Mr. Lu, the assistant asked tentatively. Lu Linjie looked at him deeply and said, Get out. After coming out of the office, the assistant reached back and touched. Oh boy, it's so wet. When Qiao Yi opened her eyes, she saw Zhu Ronghan lying beside her bed and sleeping like that. He was wearing a blue Chinese gown, holding a book in his hand, and the sunlight was shining all over him. Mr. Zhu. Why are you in my room? Qiao Yi called out in surprise, but the man didn't wake up. She reached out to pull the book out. The book in my hand suddenly tightened. It turned out that Zhu Ronghan woke up. You're awake. I called you just now, but you didn't answer. Qiao Yi repeated the question again. Zhu Ronghan took the book back with his slender fingers and did not answer her question. Are you feeling better? Were you worried about her so you stayed here all night? Looking at the faint dark circles under Zhu Ronghan's eyes, Qiao Yi felt a little guilty. Much better. Qiao Yi smiled slightly. Mr. Zhu, you have helped me so much. In order to repay you, I want to try to make you a Japanese meal. I hope you don't mind. After saying that, she lifted the quilt, revealing her snow-white calves and stuffed her feet into slippers. Zhu Ronghan stood up and stopped her. Ms. Qiao, no thanks. The kitchen is temporarily unavailable today. If you really want to thank me, please treat me to a meal. Gurgle. Qiao Yi's stomach made a rumbling sound. She looked at Zhu Ronghan somewhat embarrassedly. Zhu Ronghan looked at her gently. The two looked at each other and smiled. Soon Qiao Yi chose a Japanese restaurant. Excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom first. Zhu Ronghan greeted politely. The atmosphere is so good, it's time to talk about cooperation. There was a sound behind him. Qiao Yi stood up with a smile, but it was not him who came back. Chapter 19. Qiao. What a coincidence, I ran into you here. I'm sorry for what happened last time. I didn't know Lu Linjie would treat you like this. Can you forgive me? Xiao Mingchen looked at her sincerely and expectantly. Qiao Yi immediately took a few steps back and distanced himself from him. When Xiao Mingchen saw her actions, his eyes were filled with hurt. Qiao, you are still blaming me. I just want to see you. Xiao Mingchen stepped forward and held her hand. Qiao Yi quickly pulled his hand out. Bitch! You're seducing Mingchen again. When Lu Linjie came back from the bathroom, she saw this scene. She was so angry that she rushed over and pushed Qiao Yi away. There was such a bustle in the restaurant that all the diners focused their attention on them. There were especially many eyes on Qiao Yi. You misunderstood. Qiao Yi recovered and explained calmly. Her task today was to discuss cooperation and she didn't want to make things worse. Yes, you misunderstood. I just happened to see Qiao here, so I came over to apologize to her. Xiao Mingchen helped Qiao Yi explain. He was stating the facts, but how could a woman who had lost her mind believe him? Who wouldn't he be angry when her fiancé defends another woman? Lu Linjie sneered and pointed at her. Do you think I'm blind? Do I need to go through so much trouble to apologize? She was talking about the scene just now. That's true. But that is not the case. Qiao Yi looked at Xiao Mingchen expressionlessly, and he had no intention of speaking. She took a deep breath and said, It's not what you think. Please leave. I have an appointment here. She thought that today was a good day to talk about work. It will be a bad influence if Zhu Ronghan comes back and sees it next time. You made an appointment with someone. I think you made an appointment with a man, right? Then why are you still pestering Xiao Mingchen? He has a fiancé. Lu Linjie's words were full of sarcasm, and became increasingly unpleasant. Qiao Yi's face darkened. She continued to be patient and called the waiter. Hello, please help me change the table. She saw a seat in the corner not far away. It's easier to talk about work in a private way. How dare you ignore me? Lu Linjie was so angry that she picked up the water on the table and threw it at her. Qiao Yi quickly closed his eyes so that the water did not enter his eyes. The onlookers suddenly made a hissing sound. What are you doing? How could you do this to Qiao? Xiao Mingchen stood up at this time and protected Qiao Yi with one hand. The water flowed down from top to bottom, and her hair was almost completely wet. The waiter quickly handed over a handkerchief, but was scared back by Lu Linjie's look. The handkerchief was taken by a pair of slender hands. Zhu Ronghan carefully helped Qiao Yi dry his hair. Mr. Zhu. Qiao Yi's voice was slightly choked. I don't know when he came. Did he see everything? The man gently picked up her hair and wiped it lightly with a towel. Zhou wanted to do it himself. Zhu Ronghan was unusually strong. Miss Qiao, I'll help you. There was a hint of anger on Zhu Ronghan's gentle face. But if you don't look closely, you can't see it. Qiao Yi put down his hand and let him do what he wanted. Xiao Mingchen looked at Qiao Yi with a complicated expression, and clenched his hands hanging on both sides quietly. Qiao, I'm sorry. I apologize to you on her behalf. His tone was full of guilt. Qiao Yi shook his head. Brother Xiao, this is not your fault. Zhu Ronghan suppressed his smile and ordered in a deep voice. Ms. Hua, apologize. Boss Zhu, it was Qiao Yi who seduced my fiancée. Don't be fooled by her. She is a wanton woman. Apologize. Asking her to apologize. Lu Linjie gritted her teeth and spoke up to defend herself without caring about Zhu Ronghan's identity. She just didn't want Qiao Yi to have an easy time. Qiao Yi met everyone's gaze. There is surprise, irony and amusement in it. The words have been put on the table. Zhu Ronghan will definitely abandon Qiao Yi. By then, without the support of the Zhu family, it would be easy to kill her. Qiao Yi bit her lip and looked up at Zhu Ronghan. Wet hair stuck to face. Everyone was waiting for Zhu Ronghan's reaction. Especially Lu Linjie, who was gloating over other people's misfortune. Whoever threw the splash at you, Zhu Ronghan smiled at Qiao Yi, just throw it back. No one will dare to do anything to you. The waiter brought a glass of water and placed it in front of Qiao Yi. As soon as these words came out, Lu Linjie's face suddenly turned pale. He looked at Zhu Ronghan with disbelief. The Hu family is a big family after all, and has a certain status in the upper class circle. The daughter of the Hu family is naturally the apple of their eye, and no one dares to treat her like this. Qiao Yi nodded. She is not a soft persimmon that anyone can pinch. It just so happened that she had wanted to do this for a long time. The water the waiter brought was a glass of cold water. After taking several steps back, Lu Linjie still couldn't believe it. Boss Zhu, I am the daughter of the Hu family. Aren't you afraid that the Hu family will cause you trouble? Qiao Yi hesitated for a moment as he held the water cup. Seeing her like this, Lu Linjie immediately felt relieved. She looked at Qiao Yi with mockery. She has always been arrogant and domineering, who dares to treat her like this? But who knew that the next second, Zhu Ronghan smiled and said, Miss Qiao, don't be afraid, throw it back. Qiao Yi didn't hesitate at all. He splashed the water onto Lu Linjie's face, which was covered with delicate makeup. The eyeliner was instantly melted away, forming a black line, looking very embarrassing. How could Lu Linjie, who had been spoiled since childhood, have never suffered such humiliation? Qiao Yi. You bitch. The water was freezing cold. Everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to speak. Lu Linjie's eyes were red. She glared at Qiao Yi fiercely, quickly picked up her bag, and ran out crying. Seeing this, Xiao Mingchen looked at Qiao Yi guiltily and then chased after him. Two figures were standing, one in front and one behind. I could vaguely see the man desperately chasing the woman, and the woman was running faster and faster. Seeing that the excitement had died down, the onlookers had no choice but to continue sitting down and eating. Qiao Yi stood there looking embarrassed. Her makeup was almost gone. It would be a bit of a distraction to eat now. Mr. Zhu, I'm so sorry. I promised to treat you to a meal, but now I've screwed it up. The restaurant waiter kindly helped her change a towel and then quickly cleaned the water stains on the floor. All the tableware on the table was replaced with new ones. It doesn't matter. Then Mr. Zhu, let's talk about cooperation. Qiao Yi went straight to the point. Don't worry. Zhu Ronghan looked down at her and said, I'll take you back first. You're not in a good mood to talk about work. It's okay. I'm going to the store next door to change clothes. Mr. Zhu, please wait for me. When he came, Qiao Yi saw a shopping mall nearby. I calculated that if I act quickly, it can be done in 5 minutes. Just at this moment, someone came up and interrupted their conversation. It turned out to be the manager of the restaurant. Hey guys, this is our restaurant's signature dish. I hope you enjoy your meal. The manager looked flattering. Chapter 20 Rescue. It should be that he could see that Zhu Ronghan's identity was not simple. After saying this, he glanced at Qiao Yi. After Lu Linjie made such a fuss, everyone in the restaurant looked at her with tinted glasses. Qiao Yi didn't care. If they could reach a cooperation today, her mission would be accomplished. Just as she was about to change her clothes, she was stopped. Their eyes met, and Zhu Ronghan smiled at her gently. I'll take you back to rest first, there's no rush for work. It seems there is no way to get him to sign the contract today. Qiao Yi bit her lip. If she continued to insist, Zhu Ronghan might be disgusted. She nodded. Let's go back then. It's a pity that such a good opportunity was missed today. Qiao Yi sat in the passenger seat and sighed softly. Sorry, Mr. Zhu, I'll cook for you myself when the kitchen is repaired. Lu Linjie nodded slightly. It's an honor. As they were almost reaching the villa area, the phone in Qiao Yi's hand rang. She glanced at Zhu Ronghan and picked up the phone. The caller is Lu Linjie. Look at the name. Qiao Yi's heart will still be touched. Boss Lu, what's the matter? Her tone was flat. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. A man's deep voice came from the receiver. Come to the company. Qiao Yi took a deep breath and was about to refuse. Unexpectedly, the man was one step faster than her. There is a cooperation that you need to discuss. She squeezed her phone. Mr. Lu, I am no longer your secretary. Ms. Jiang is more suitable than me. Qiao Yi, you have to recognize your own identity. Lu Linjie sneered. As soon as he finished speaking, a chaotic sound came from the phone. It sounded like the phone was handed to someone. Really? The next second, a cute voice came from the other end of the receiver. Secretary Qiao, please help me. I haven't learned what you taught me yet. Am I too stupid? It's because of Jiang Xiexue again. Qiao Yi's heart had been hurt so many times that it gradually became numb. I'll give you an address later. You and Axu go there together and teach her. Lu Linjie's voice was low, but when he called Axu, his tone was very gentle. The car stopped suddenly. Qiao Yi rushed forward due to inertia. Careful. Zhu Ronghan quickly supported Qiao Yi with his hands. She gave him a grateful look. There was silence on the other end of the line. The man's cold voice came, Are you in Zhu Ronghan's car? The brake noise was a bit loud and passed through. Qiao Yi hummed, and was about to refuse again when she heard the man say, That's great. I'll send you the address and you can go directly there. Remember, you can only succeed and not fail. After that, the other party hung up the phone. Lu Linjie didn't give her any chance to refuse. Qiao Yi looked a little ugly. She was like a dog that came when called and left when dismissed. Suddenly, a hand fell on Qiao Yi's shoulder. Zhu Ronghan asked with concern, What's wrong? I'm sorry, Mr. Lu has given me a temporary task and wants me to discuss a cooperation. Mr. Zhu, please leave me here and I'll take a taxi. Qiao Yi comforted himself in his heart. This should be the last time. Wait until she is no longer of use. She was completely abandoned. I thought of my younger brother who was still recovering from an illness. Qiao Yi's eyes were a little moist. It's okay. I'll take you there. Just tell me the address. Qiao Yi did not refuse and gave an address. The journey was a bit long, and there was a traffic jam when we got there. Qiao Yi looked at the text message from Jiang Xiexue on his phone. I was asking her if she had arrived, and she had already arrived. She thought about it and replied, There is a little traffic jam on the road, I will be there soon. This is getting a bit sloppy. Qiao Yi immediately discovered that the road ahead had been jammed for a long time. Zhu Ronghan turned on the radio, and then the sound of news broadcast was heard. There has been a traffic accident on Jinchuan Bridge. Emergency personnel are rushing to the scene. The traffic jam is expected to last for an hour. Drivers in a hurry, please take a DTIC. Thank you for your cooperation. Just happened to meet him. Qiao Yi stuck his head out to take a look. There's no end in sight for the traffic jam ahead. Zhu Ronghan said helplessly, I should have known not to take this path. Looking at the phone that had no more messages, Qiao Yi turned off the screen. This is something no one expected, I hope no one was injured. The neon lights of the Jinchuan Bridge shone on everyone's cars, and the wind blew along the river, bringing a hint of coolness. It's connected. Someone in front shouted. The club where we discussed cooperation was less than 10 minutes away from the Jinchuan Bridge. Qiao Yi found the box number given by Jiang Xiexue. The door was open, and she could smell the strong smell of alcohol before she even reached it. Qiao Yi frowned. The alcohol content of this wine was very high. She thought she had a pretty good alcohol tolerance. But she couldn't last more than a few rounds of this kind of wine. I just don't know if Jiang Xiexue can drink it. When Qiao Yi was thinking about this question, he heard a noise coming from inside. Ms. Jiang, your thighs are so smooth, but your breasts are a little small. A vulgar male voice came from the box. Next came Jiang Xieshue's voice. Mr. Li, please don't be like this. Sign the contract first. Her voice was trembling, but she still pretended to be calm. Mr. Li chuckled. He looked her up and down with disgusting eyes. Don't worry, just let me touch it and I'll sign. If you do this again, I'll call for help. Jiang Xieshue threatened softly. Mr. Li didn't take her threat seriously at all. No one in this place dares to ruin my good deeds. Mr. Li was just about to rush forward. Get out of here. Jiang Xieshue screamed in fear. Bang! The door was kicked open by Qiao Yi. Mr. Li was shocked and subconsciously let go of his dirty hands. Secretary Qiao. You're here. Jiang Xieshue cried, gathered her clothes, and tried to escape, but was pushed back by the man. Secretary Qiao, save me. With tears in her eyes, she asked for help. Qiao Yi smiled flatteringly and said, Mr. Li, Miss Jiang wants to go to the bathroom. How about you let her go to the bathroom and then come back to discuss cooperation? Mr. Li had an expression on his face that said, do you take me as a fool? It seems that this person is not easy to fool. Qiao Yi smiled again. Are you still afraid that someone will run away? You are someone we cannot afford to offend. Mr. Li's expression relaxed a little. He let go of his hand and looked at Jiang Xieshue with a lewd expression. Okay, I don't think you dare to offend me. Jiang Xieshue quickly put on her clothes and was stopped by Qiao Yi when she passed by her. Ms. Jiang, please ask Mr. Lu to come over and help. A strange color flashed across Jiang Xieshue's eyes. She nodded and ran away quickly. Qiao Yi turned around and looked at her, hoping that she would ask Lu Linjie to come over as soon as possible. The wine on the table was scattered all over the place. There wasn't even a waiter at the door. You can tell at first glance that this person has no good intentions. Mr. Li, I offer my respect to you as an apology. Qiao Yi raised a full glass of wine and smiled ingratiatingly. Mr. Li shook his head and snorted coldly, this bottle of wine is all yours. Chapter 21 Smashing. She was stunned for a moment, gritted her teeth, picked up the bottle, and drank it down in one gulp. After one bottle, it's quickly empty. Mr. Li, I finished drinking. Would you like to take a look at this contract? Obesity causes the flesh on a man's face to be squeezed together. A hint of surprise flashed across Mr. Li's face. In front of him was Qiao Yi, whose face was slightly red, and there was a hint of greed in his obscene eyes. I suddenly realized that you are much prettier than that little girl, and your figure is better than hers. What's the meaning? Qiao Yi was stunned for a moment. She pretended to run away. But the man quickly stood up and blocked the door of the box, sweeping the coffee table, and Qiao Yi was pressed under him. Let me go. You wish. No one will come to save you now. The man let out an obscene laugh and reached out his dirty hands to Qiao Yi in the face of her desperate gaze. Screams were heard. Mr. Li covered his head in pain and fell to the ground with a grim face. In front of him was Qiao Yi, holding a half-full bottle of wine. After realizing that he had gotten into trouble, Qiao Yi's face turned pale. The blood on the man's head immediately flowed in all directions. You stinky woman! Just wait for me. Mr. Li lay on the ground, gasping for breath, with a ferocious look on his face. Qiao Yi didn't care about cooperation anymore, he pushed open the door and ran out. After leaving the club, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. No one came to rescue her for such a long time, and Qiao Yi understood everything in an instant. Jiang Xieshue did it on purpose. She smiled bitterly on her pale little face. Zhu Ronghan went to the company to handle some matters. Qiao Yi gathered her clothes and took a taxi home without caring whether Lu Linjie would be angry or not. At the same time, the assistant knocked on the office door with a troubled look on his face. Lu Linjie raised his head and looked inquiringly. Mr. Lu. Mr. Li called and said he would not cooperate. Lu Linjie paused with his pen in hand, his face gloomy and his brows furrowed. What's going on? He recognized Qiao Yi's abilities. The assistant swallowed and looked at him cautiously. Mr. Li said that the person who was discussing cooperation injured him. Mr. Lu, it should be Sister Qiao Yi. The assistant wiped his sweat and made careful guesses. Jiang Xieshue and Qiao Yi went together to discuss cooperation, so the person who injured someone could only be Qiao Yi. After all, Jiang Xieshue is not that brave. She's been getting bolder lately. Lu Linjie sneered and called her in front of the assistant. At this moment, Qiao Yi was washing his face in the bathroom to wake himself up. A handful of cold water was poured on the face. It finally cleared her mind a little. The phone call came. Qiao Yi pressed the answer button without thinking. The tap was still on. The man frowned. It's very noisy. Qiao Yi paused and reached out to turn on the faucet. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me? Have you become more capable? Do you want me to clean up your mess? The man's sharp voice brought Qiao Yi back to his senses immediately. She shivered all over and her nose felt sore. How dare I? Mr. Lu is very busy every day. How dare I bother you to clean up my mess? These sarcastic words were unlike the usual Qiao Yi. The other side sneered. What? Do you think you have Zhu Ronghand support and dare to talk to me like this? Reality suddenly brought her back to her senses. Qiao Yi choked, took a deep breath, and apologized immediately. Lu Linjie put one hand in his pocket and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the office. Just one look. Everything is insignificant in front of him. What's going on, Mr. Li? Qiao Yi told him the whole situation and explained that he had no choice. The man's hand holding the phone clenched unconsciously, but his words were cold. This is not a reason, Qiao Yi. So what do you want from me? Sorry, Mr. Lu, I didn't mean it. After realizing what he had said, Qiao Yi explained in a panic. Why didn't you tell me? Lu Linjie suddenly said something that made people confused. Countless emotions flashed through Qiao Yi's mind, but she denied them one by one. Warn yourself not to be too sentimental. She took a deep breath and said, I asked Miss Jiang to ask you to come over to help. What I mean has been made very clear. Lu Linjie was silent for a moment, and no emotion could be heard in his words. Just then, Jiang Sheshua ran into the office crying, with tear marks on her pretty face. She threw herself into Lu Linjie's arms without even looking. Boss Li bullied me, luckily I broke free when he wasn't paying attention, otherwise I wouldn't be able to see you. Seeing that no one spoke, she continued, you asked Secretary Qiao to help me. I waited for a long time but she didn't come. Did Secretary Qiao not like me and didn't come? She was crying with tears in her eyes. I want Lu Linjie to coax me. What a good trick to bite back. In the past, men would react at this time. Ms. Jiang, it's not nice for you to gossip like this. Qiao Yi's voice came from above her head. Jiang Sheshua's body froze and she even forgot to cry. Lu Linjie looked at her with inquiring eyes. Axu, Qiao Yi just told me, why didn't you tell me when this happened? Although my heart has long been numb. But even Lu Linjie's questioning was so painless. A bitter feeling welled up in Qiao Yi's heart and a tear rolled down the corner of his eye. Boss Lu, I was just too scared and got confused for a moment. A trace of resentment flashed in Jiang Sheshua's eyes. In fact, when Qiao Yi helped her out just now, she was very grateful. When going out to make a call, Jiang Sheshua hesitated. Qiao Yi's presence made her feel uncomfortable. Even if she appears to not care. But I really can't do it and I really don't care. It was just right for Qiao Yi to be insulted. Lu Linjie would completely hate her. There was a gleam of light in Jiang Sheshua's eyes. Soon, his expression changed into a pitiful one. Ms. Jiang, I don't know how I offended you. You left me there alone. Have you ever thought about my situation? The man's obscene expression and sticky eyes lingered in Qiao Yi's mind. She closed her eyes, not wanting to let Jiang Sheshua go so easily. No, Secretary Qiao, I want to contact Mr. Lu. Jiang Sheshua sobbed a few times and trembled all over. But when I thought about the scene just now, I couldn't help but feel scared, and my mind suddenly became unclear. I'm sorry, Secretary Qiao, I shouldn't have left you there alone. Such a crude lie. But Lu Linjie believed it. He helped Jiang Sheshua to the sofa, his face darkened and he looked a little unhappy. Okay, our Shui was also frightened, so let this be a lesson. I won't pursue the matter this time. Lu Linjie always keeps his word. Having said that, Qiao Yi knew. She failed, completely failed. Got it, Mr. Lu. Qiao Yi was afraid that she would lose control of her emotions and question him in the next second, so she hung up the phone quickly. Qiao Yi. You are so stupid. Your heart has been broken a long time ago, hasn't it? From now on, don't hold any hope for Lu Linjie anymore. In the small bathroom, the faint sound of a woman crying could be heard. Lu Linjie held the hung-up phone, his fingertips turning white. Chapter 22, Pit. When Jiang Xiaoxue saw him protecting her like this, a hint of pride flashed in her eyes. It seems that Lu Linjie really doesn't care about Qiao Yi at all. Boss Lu, it's my fault. I messed up the cooperation. She sniffed and said aggrievedly. Lu Linjie pinched his brows and softened his tone. Don't blame you, it's Qiao Yi's fault. Lu Lin's showtime is gloomy and bottomless. He sent a message to his assistant. Let the assistant deal with Mr. Li. For several days in a row, Jiang Xiaoxue came to the villa to find Qiao Yi, saying that she came to apologize. Qiao Yi didn't want to pay attention to her and avoided her every time. After hearing this, Lu Linjie only said, no need to apologize to her. Seeing that the man supported her, Jiang Xiaoxue was suddenly happy and felt more proud. Night. Zhu Ronghan sat in the study with a sad face. The computer contains important information about this cooperation. The translator fell ill temporarily. For a moment, I couldn't find a suitable translation. Miss Qiao, can you help me take the milk over? The gentleman refuses to drink it. It should be better if you go and tell him. The nanny was holding a glass of milk and looked worried. Qiao Yi put down the magazine in his hand, looking a little embarrassed. She had never been into Zhu Ronghan's study, and she wasn't sure she could go in. But I thought this was a good opportunity to get close to Zhu Ronghan. Qiao Yi gritted his teeth and took it. She knocked on the door politely and walked in after receiving a response from the person inside. Seeing that it was Qiao Yi, Zhu Ronghan was a little surprised. But when he saw what she was holding, he understood immediately. I was a little upset, so I had no appetite just now. Zhu Ronghan took the milk, took a sip and explained. What's bothering you, Mr. Zhu? Would you mind telling me? Zhu Ronghan's study is filled with books. The Japanese-style decoration adds a touch of charm. I'm going to France to discuss cooperation, but my translator is sick and I can't find a suitable translator now. So the cooperation is probably impossible. I can speak French, let me go. Hearing this, Qiao Yi couldn't help but feel fortunate that he knew so much. Memories come flooding back. Before, for Lu Linjie, she specially learned French cuisine for him. That was when I learned French. Zhu Ronghan was slightly surprised and his face relaxed. That's great, Miss Qiao, you really helped me a lot. Zhu Ronghan's hands typing on the keyboard quickened a bit, and he picked up the milk beside him and took a sip. Seeing his attitude, Qiao Yi thought about taking this opportunity to get the contract. Early the next morning, Zhu Ronghan and Qiao Yi flew to France. After getting off the plane, people sent by the partner were already waiting outside the airport. There were rows of luxury cars, and they all took this negotiation very seriously. Qiao Yi was a little nervous. She looked at the important information in her hand and tried eagerly to memorize it in her mind. We must not mess it up this time. We soon arrived at our destination. The doorman opened the car door and made a gesture of invitation. The French receptionist saw a flash of surprise in Qiao Yi's eyes. The woman was wearing a slim-fitting black cheongsam with flowers wrapped around it, which was quite traditional Chinese in style. Looking down at the slender calves, there is a pair of 10-centimeter high heels, which is simply charming. French receptionist, beautiful lady, your beauty has touched my heart. The pronunciation used is a bit unstandard in Chinese. Qiao Yi smiled and nodded. Zhu Ronghan extended his hand and smiled politely. Hello, I am glad to come to beautiful France. I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation. Qiao Yi, who was standing by, translated it slowly and calmly for the French receptionist. There was even more surprise in the man's eyes. Qiao Yi understood. The other party might have thought that she was the female companion brought by Zhu Ronghan. Back to the story. The receptionist immediately took them to the negotiation room. A huge conference room. Zhu Ronghan helped Qiao Yi pull out the chair, and then the two sides started. The translators for both sides sat next to the people who needed translation. The translator for the French side was a Chinese man with a serious face. The partner was a little skeptical at first, but was later impressed by Zhu Ronghan's professional knowledge. Zhu Ronghan analyzed the possible problems that might arise between the two companies, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of cooperation from a professional perspective. What's more important is that sincere attitude, which moved everyone present. After he finished speaking, all the French partners applauded and expressed their admiration. I hope to have a pleasant cooperation with your company. Qiao Yi quickly translated it and the two sides reached a cooperation agreement. The partners looked at her with admiration. Before leaving, I praised her in French. Qiao Yi felt a little embarrassed for a moment and reached out to push the curls aside to the back. She twisted her ankle and felt a little tired after wearing the 10-centimeter pants for so long. When she came to her senses, she saw Zhu Ronghan had been staring at her. You speak standard French. Thanks to you, I would like to take you to taste the local delicacies as a thank you. Do I have the honor to do so? Certainly. Qiao Yi smiled. Mr. Zhu, why don't we talk about cooperation today? Now is a good opportunity, so she strikes while the iron is hot. Hearing this, Zhu Ronghan's smile faded for a moment, but he soon smiled again and said, no hurry. We still need to inspect the project in France for a while. It won't be too late to talk about it after it's over. Miss Qiao, what do you think? Hearing him say this, Qiao Yi's eyes dimmed and he felt a little lost. Your President Lu is really anxious. Zhu Ronghan said something meaningful. Ms. Qiao, please come to work in my company. The treatment will definitely not be bad. Jumping from one pit to another? Qiao Yi's eyes flickered, and he shook his head and refused. She doesn't want to be tied to anyone anymore. The other side. Hu Lingxian got Jiang Sheshue's number from somewhere. Sent a text message to the other party with an address attached. She was confident that Jiang Sheshue would definitely come to the appointment. Sure enough, the agreed time arrived. The door of the cafe was pushed open and Jiang Sheshue, dressed in designer clothes, walked in. Ms. Jiang, here. Hu Lingxian stood up and waved at her. Jiang Sheshue has a very innocent face, but she is very petty. Unlike Qiao Yi, her beauty is ostentatious and very aggressive. What do you want from me? Jiang Sheshue looked at her warily. Hu Lingxian smiled. Ms. Jiang, there were many misunderstandings before. I am here to apologize to you today. The person in front of him looked in disbelief. This is not the purpose of your coming here today, you are the daughter of the Hu family. The implication was, how could Hu Lingxian come to apologize to her? Yes, I came to ask you for help. Jiang Sheshue's face looked even more confused. You don't understand or you are pretending to understand. Qiao Yi seduced my fiancée and also seduced Lu Linjie. Aren't you angry at all? It has to be said openly. Hu Lingxian spoke a little loudly, attracting curious glances from the people at the next table. I believe Secretary Qiao, and Mr. Lu only has me in his heart. Miss Hu, the most important thing for you is to take good care of your fiancé. A man's heart is with whoever he loves. Chapter 23 Fan. You. Hu Lingxian stood up suddenly and looked at her as if she were a fool. Her face was full of disbelief. You're going to regret this. Qiao Yi is a bitch. Why don't you join forces with me to get rid of her? Xiao Mingchen is her fiancé. But my heart was thinking about Qiao Yi. Hu Lingxian was almost going crazy with jealousy. I won't agree to that. Jiang Sheshue stood up, sniffed, and said softly, I'm going back. After saying that, he stood up and walked towards the cashier. Hello, please help me pay the bill for that table. Jiang Sheshue paid the bill and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind Hu Lingxian with a look of resentment. Jiang Sheshue looked at the vehicles passing by and her memories came back. Qiao Yi was quite nice to her, at least he never hurt her. Hu Lingxian probably didn't expect it. Jiang Sheshue would turn around and send the text message asking her to join forces to Qiao Yi. Be careful of Hu Lingxian. Looking at the text message from Jiang Sheshue, Qiao Yi turned off the screen with a cold expression. She raised the wine glass in front of her and clinked it with Zhu Ronghan who was sitting opposite her. In front of the Eiffel Tower, the two exclaimed at the beautiful scenery. Mr. Lu, when will you come back from France? I miss you. Jiang Sheshue spoke in a coquettish tone. Be good, I'll be back in a few days. Lu Linjie coaxed softly. She pouted, said okay, and hung up the phone. Lu Linjie has been on a business trip in France in recent days. She was not familiar with the job yet and could not go on business trips with Lu Linjie. Today is the third day in France. Zhu Ronghan took Qiao Yi to from important meetings. Almost everyone knows her. Take her with you to the banquet. Qiao Yi felt like his legs were about to break. The 10-centimeter high heels seemed to have never left her feet. Zhu Ronghan smiled and said, "I'll take you to relax tonight, just wear anything you want." "Where are we going? Can you tell us in advance?" Qiao Yi was a little excited, thinking that maybe tonight would be a good opportunity. Zhu Ronghan smiled and said, "You'll know when the time comes." The man raised his hand to touch her head, but Qiao Yi dodged it. The slender hand paused in the air. Qiao Yi looked at him with a somewhat apologetic look. "Mr. Zhu, I'm not used to people touching my hair." "No rush." Zhu Ronghan didn't seem to feel embarrassed. He smiled gently, "I'll take you back to change clothes and pick you up in the evening." Qiao Yi suddenly felt a little ashamed. She bit her lip, wondering if she had just gone too far. Zhu Ronghan sent her back. Qiao Yi took off her high heels and her feet felt a lot more relaxed. She thought about it and sent an apology text message to Zhu Ronghan. After a while, I received a reply, "It's okay." It seemed like Zhu Ronghan would never be angry with her. Soon it was night. Qiao Yi put on her makeup and changed into a pair of flat shoes and a shoulder-bearing dress. The curly hair is on the side, very gentle. After going downstairs, Zhu Ronghan was already waiting for her by the car door. "You look a little different today." Zhu Ronghan smiled slightly, and the gentleman opened the car door for her. "You said to relax." Qiao Yi showed a state of relaxation that he had never had before. It seemed like he had never seen her like this before. Zhu Ronghan's hands on the steering wheel paused, but quickly returned to normal. He smiled faintly, "You're right, I didn't think it through." After Qiao Yi fastened his seat belt, the car started. Soon, we arrived at our destination. It's a club. A place frequented by rich kids. Qiao Yi was a little surprised and looked at Zhu Ronghan. It seemed that she didn't understand why the other party brought her here. Zhu Ronghan gave her a soothing look and then bent his arms slightly. Qiao Yi immediately understood and took his arm. The elevator reached the 17th floor, and the waiter led them to the private room. As soon as they opened the door, the sound of rock music came into their ears. Zhu Ronghan raised his hand and someone immediately turned off the music. It seems that among this group of people, if he says something, no one dares to disagree. "Ronghan, you are finally here. Who is this person next to you?" A typical rich young man made a joke. "It's not your girlfriend, is it?" Zhu Ronghan smiled at them and said in a gentle voice, "Long time no see." Everyone burst into laughter immediately. Qiao Yi looked carefully and found that their eyes were all on her. Each of them was accompanied by a female companion. But when Qiao Yi appeared, their eyes were involuntarily drawn to him. Someone joked, "Great, Ronghan, I've never seen you bring a female companion here to play before, but it turns out you have such a beautiful lady." Everyone agreed. Zhu Ronghan smiled and said nothing. He took Qiao Yi to a seat. "Let me introduce you. This is Han Feng, my senior." Qiao Yi smiled and said, "Hello, Senior Han Feng. I thought this greeting was just a courtesy." But then Zhu Ronghan introduced all the people to Qiao Yi one by one. They are all Zhu Ronghan's good friends or fellow disciples. Qiao Yi was a little at a loss. "I don't understand what the man means by this. Junior brother, why don't you just introduce us? Introduce this beautiful lady next to you. If one person starts a booing, everyone will follow." "Hello everyone, my name is Qiao Yi, and I'm Mr. Zhu's friend." Qiao Yi suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She was given to Zhu Ronghan by Lu Linjie. This introduction left everyone scratching their heads. They looked at each other. The atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. "Sorry, I feel a little unwell. I need to go to the bathroom." After Qiao Yi finished speaking, he opened the door and walked out quickly. There is an observation deck on this floor, and the view from here is beautiful. Qiao Yi thought about staying there for a while after going to the bathroom. Suddenly, her hand was pulled hard. Before Qiao Yi could see clearly who it was, he was dragged to a blind spot in the surveillance camera. "Lu Linjie? Wait until you see clearly who is pulling you." A feeling of bitterness suddenly surged in Qiao Yi's heart. She pulled away and said coldly, "Boss Lu is following me." Lu Linjie's face darkened and became so dark that water seemed to be dripping from it. "Qiao Yi, you are great." Qiao Yi's chin was suddenly pinched hard. The man kissed her with his thin lips, with a bit of anger. Qiao Yi widened her eyes, a feeling of humiliation welling up in her eyes, and she struggled desperately. The man seemed very displeased and bit her lips hard. Qiao Yi used all his strength to push Lu Linjie away. Bang! She slapped him without hesitation. The man's face was slapped to the side. In addition to shock, there was also anger in Lu Linjie's eyes. Qiao Yi, you have become more capable. The man narrowed his black eyes slightly, and a dangerous aura emanated from his body. Qiao Yi was so frightened that his whole body froze. But since she dared to do this, it meant that she had decided to bear all the consequences. She didn't want to be toyed with by Lu Linjie anymore. Qiao Yi, you don't remember your identity? Huh. Chapter 24. Stop. Of course she remembered. She still remembered that he played with her like a dog. Mr. Lu, please respect yourself. I don't want to be a mistress. Qiao Yi closed her eyes, the tears on her cheeks were still there. Oh. Lu Linjie sneered. We've already climbed into bed, do you still care about these things? Why did you lie to me when I asked you to find me? Qiao Yi opened her eyes and found that she had received a text message during the day. Lu Linjie asked her to wait for him at the hotel. She said she was discussing cooperation and was not available. But she appeared in the club at night, dressed so beautifully. Lu Linjie's eyes darkened and he forced Qiao Yi to meet his eyes. Now the lie has been exposed. She had nothing more to say. Boss Lu, I didn't lie to you. I really am. Before Qiao Yi could finish her words, the man seemed extremely angry and kissed her lips hard again. Mr. Lu, does Miss Jiang know that you are like this? Qiao Yi pushed him away fiercely. Even a dog can be sad. But Lu Linjie had broken her heart, and her heart had gradually become numb. What? You want to keep your virginity for Zhu Ronghan? Lu Linjie sneered and put his hand into the woman's collar. She looked at him in disbelief, her heart feeling as if it were entangled by vines. He knew it clearly. He was the one who sent her to Zhu Ronghan. Qiao Yi pushed him away suddenly, her eyes filled with emotions that Lu Linjie couldn't understand. For no reason, the man suddenly felt a sense of panic in his heart. I'm sorry, Mr. Lu. I've been out for so long. Mr. Zhu will be worried. I'll go back first. Qiao Yi turned around, and almost instantly, tears streamed down her face. Lu Linjie stood behind her and watched her leaving with a gloomy look. The assistant who came out to look for him happened to see him. Boss Lu, why are you here? The assistant was stunned for a moment, and he deliberately found a secluded place to smoke. Lu Linjie put his hands in his pockets, licked his cheeks, and looked cold. Stop using Qiao Yi's card. Okay, Mr. Lu, do you want to stop right now? The assistant quickly put the cigarette back into his pocket. Lu Linjie glanced at him coldly. The assistant immediately understood and started operating on the spot. Okay, Mr. Lu, I'll go now. Soon, the card used to pay for Qiao Yi's brother's medical expenses was immediately frozen. Lu Linjie nonchalantly looked at the red wine glass in front of him and listened to his assistant's report with a look that was uncertain and unfathomable. Qiao Yi quickly calmed down. She put on some makeup, then pretended nothing had happened and pushed the door open. The people inside had already started having fun, some were drinking, some were playing cards. Zhu Ronghan's fellow disciples did not come over to ask her any strange questions. Zhu Ronghan gave Qiao Yi a look that reassured him. It seemed that she had specifically told them not to disturb her. Qiao Yi felt very embarrassed instantly. She held a glass of red wine and bit her lip and said, Mr. Zhu, I'm really sorry to ruin your mood. The two glasses clinked together. Zhu Ronghan smiled gently and shook his head nonchalantly. It's okay. They scared you. This is also my fault. I was too anxious and wanted to introduce you to the people around me. He finished speaking and looked at her with sharp eyes. Qiao Yi subconsciously avoided Zhu Ronghan's gaze. She was a little at a loss. What does Zhu Ronghan mean? Is he expressing his feelings to her? You don't have to be so nervous. Don't worry, I won't force you if you don't want to, Miss Qiao. After Zhu Ronghan finished speaking, he drank the wine in his hand. Qiao Yi followed closely behind. After the party, everyone prepared to go home. The others were hugging their female companions, and one of them was dissatisfied. Zhu Ronghan, why don't you hug your girlfriend? Are you shy? Qiao Yi's face turned red. Just as she was about to speak, a hand appeared on her waist and gently rested on it. The man's hands were very measured and barely touched Qiao Yi's waist. Qiao Yi was tactful enough not to push it away. It's my fault. I forgot. We had a lot of fun today. Let's play together next time. After saying that, Zhu Ronghan put his arm around Qiao Yi's waist and walked towards the car. Right now. No one noticed that in a black car in the distance, Lu Linjie's black eyes were staring at them. The next day, Qiao Yi was following up on the project with Zhu Ronghan. At this moment, the cell phone rang at an inopportune time. Qiao Yi gave an apologetic expression, then quickly walked aside and lowered his voice. Mom, what are you doing? I'm working. Forget about that. I'm going to hang up now. Just as Qiao Yi was about to hang up the phone, he heard sobbing coming from the receiver. Her heart tightened and she quickly asked what was wrong. The hospital came to inform me today that your brother's medical expenses have not been paid. What's going on? Xu Xiuhua was very worried and used her hands to comfort her brother Xiaowen while on the phone. Qiao Yi's hand holding the phone tightened. That card was given to her by Lu Linjie. There is no way this could happen. She first calmed Xu Xiuhua down, then quickly called the bank to ask what was going on. After learning that his bank card was frozen, Qiao Yi instantly understood what was going on. It must be because she had disobeyed Lu Linjie again and again. This was a warning and also a notification from Lu Linjie to her. She needed to please him. Qiao Yi suppressed the bitterness in his heart. Zhu Ronghan walked over with some concern. Miss Qiao, what's wrong with you? Mr. Zhu, I need to return home immediately. Something happened at home. Zhu Ronghan looked embarrassed. Don't worry, Mr. Zhu, I will finish this translation well before leaving. Qiao Yi quickly suppressed the sadness in his heart and put on a smile. After finishing the translation, she said goodbye to Zhu Ronghan and immediately booked the nearest flight. Qiao Yi was anxious every second on the plane. After getting off the plane, she rushed to the hospital where her brother was. You're finally here. Your brother is sick now, go and see him. Xu Xiuhua had been waiting at the hospital entrance for a long time. She quickly came to her brother's ward. As soon as I entered the door, I saw a heart-wrenching scene. Xiaowen curled up quietly, facing the wall, holding his head tightly with his hands. Turn your head around. Xiaowen didn't react at all. Xiaowen? Sister is here to see you, Xiaowen, did you hear that? Xiaowen's eyes were empty and he didn't react at all. The doctor said Xiaowen's condition has worsened. Things had already improved. Now, it has been brought back to its original form. Xiaowen, can you hear your sister calling you? Qiao Yi was already in tears without realizing it. Xu Xiuhua asked quickly, what's going on? Is there no money in the card? Didn't Mr. Lu transfer money to you? Qiao Yi turned his head and looked at her deeply. Xu Xiuhua quickly shut her mouth. Lu Linjie is so cruel. This was to force her to submit to him. Qiao Yi took a deep breath, pretended nothing had happened, patted Xiaowen's head, and comforted her. It's okay, I'll find a way to pay for the medical expenses. Mom, you take good care of Xiaowen, I'll go and pay the fees now. Chapter 25 Bitterness. She has saved some money over the years, enough to pay for medical expenses for a period of time. Qiao Yi wiped her tears and stood up. Xiaowen behind him suddenly spoke. It's very quiet, but it makes people happy. Sister, no, Xiaowen doesn't want to be treated. Xiaowen is a burden. Xiaowen's head banged against the wall over and over again. This is what happens with autism. The doctor said that this was Xiaowen's way of expressing his emotions. Qiao Yi couldn't bear it any longer and burst into tears while hugging Xiaowen. Xu Xiuhua standing by was also wiping away tears silently. Their family has really suffered a lot. The Qiao family went bankrupt and Xiaowen has autism. Mom, take good care of Xiaowen. I haven't finished my work yet. I will come to see Xiaowen again when I have time. After coaxing Xiaowen to sleep, Qiao Yi paid the medical bills with his own money. You don't need this card anymore? Would you like to change it to this number? Qiao Yi nodded, gave his card number, then gave Xu Xiuhua a few words and left the hospital. She just got into a taxi and told the name of the airport. Zhu Ronghan called. Qiao Yi quickly picked up the phone. How are things at home? Zhu Ronghan asked gently. It's done now, Mr. Zhu. I'm already on my way to the airport. I'll be back to France soon. No need. The man said in a steady voice, you should have a good rest. You have worked hard in France this time. Just consider it as completing the mission ahead of schedule. Qiao Yi was stunned for a moment. After hanging up the phone, she asked the driver to change the address and go to Zhu Ronghan's villa. Xiaowen's problem has been solved. Qiao Yi's heart finally settled down. Lu Group. Lu Linjie crossed his legs, tapped the tabletop lightly with his slender fingers, his brows full of annoyance. Mr. Lu, I just found out that Sister Qiao Yi has returned to China. The man paused, tapping his hands on the table, and looked at his assistant with cold eyes. The assistant looked through the airline information and found that Qiao Yi had returned yesterday. Mr. Lu, Sister Qiao Yi came back yesterday. You came back but didn't come to see him? Didn't she notice that her card was suspended? With just one glance, the assistant immediately understood what Lu Linjie meant. He quickly checked the information and turned the computer over to show Lu Linjie. Sister Qiao Yi went to this hospital yesterday. Mr. Lu, you asked me to suspend my card yesterday. I have already suspended it. I just checked, and her brother's medical expenses have not been cut off. Lu Linjie said coldly. The assistant looked at him in surprise and continued, Impossible, Mr. Lu, I have clearly confirmed it. Lu Linjie gave the assistant a look and he immediately shut up. Very good, it seems that your wings have really hardened. The temperature in the office dropped suddenly. The assistant lowered his head and dared not say much. Lu Linjie's dark eyes were filled with dark currents. Did Zhu Ronghan pay for her? The assistant asked back, Mr. Lu, I don't know about this. I'll go check it out. Lu Linjie closed his eyes and said coldly, No need. Then Mr. Lu, I'll leave first if everything is okay. After the assistant left, Lu Linjie opened his eyes and sneered. Mr. Lu, do you think my new manicure looks good? Jiang Xieshua walked in with a smile, put 10 fingers in front of him, and looked expectant. Lu Linjie glanced at her indifferently and, unusually, did not praise her. Seeing that he looked unhappy, Jiang Xieshua asked with concern, Mr. Lu, what's wrong with you? Are you in a bad mood? The man turned his eyes to the computer and replied, No. Jiang Xieshua obviously didn't believe it, and she suddenly had some tentative thoughts. She stared at Lu Linjie's face and asked carefully, Is it because of Sister Qiao Yi? Unfortunately, she doesn't understand this. The human heart is the most vulnerable to temptation. When Lu Linjie heard Qiao Yi's name, his face darkened. No, don't think too much about it. This little detail was immediately captured by Jiang Xieshua. She bit her lip, feeling a little sad, and retracted her 10 fingers, pretending to glance at the floor-to-ceiling window casually. Mr. Lu, we have been together for such a long time. My parents want to see you. Do you have time this weekend? Jiang Xieshua looked at Lu Linjie a little nervously, afraid that he would be angry. The man paused and looked at her. Why do you bring this up all of a sudden? I may not be free this weekend. Jiang Xieshua's face immediately fell and her eyes looked a little aggrieved. Mr. Lu, do you not want to meet my parents, so you deliberately find an excuse to lie to me? There were tears in her eyes and she looked very aggrieved. However, Lu Linjie did not coax her as usual. This made Jiang Xieshua feel uneasy. Mr. Lu, are you tired of me? If you don't like me, then I'll leave now. She burst into tears. I know I'm not as smart as Secretary Qiao, nor as capable as Secretary Qiao, so President Lu, you despise me. Don't think too much. I? Jiang Xieshua lowered her head in grievance. Lu Linjie's expression eased a little, and he coaxed softly, How can she compare with you? I'll arrange the time, okay? Good. Jiang Xieshua was immediately happy, and walked up to Lu Linjie, holding his hand and acting coquettishly. Then he took out his cell phone, clasped his fingers together, and took a picture with a click. Lu Linjie glanced at it and didn't take it seriously, letting her sit on the sofa and play by herself. Jiang Xieshua walked to the sofa and sat down. She looked at the two people's crossed hands with great satisfaction and couldn't let go. Jiang Xieshua zoomed in and out and looked at it many times. With a click, she took another photo of Lu Linjie's cold face. Stop it. Lu Linjie said this in a nonchalant manner. Jiang Xieshua set his photo as wallpaper and smiled happily. When she finally had enough, she felt a little bored. So I opened my moments and started scrolling. What catches the eye is an official photo of two hands clasped together. The caption is, We will always be us. Mr. Lu, look, I'm so envious. I just took a picture. How about I post it on WeChat Moments? Jiang Xieshua propped up her chin and proposed seriously. The girl's eyes sparkled as she looked at the man expectantly. Lu Linjie pursed his lips and said, if you want to send it, send it. Boss Lu, I'm lying to you. I won't post it. I set it as my wallpaper. Take a look. Does it look good? As she spoke, Jiang Xieshua handed over the phone as if she was presenting a treasure. Lu Linjie took a quick glance and saw a picture of two people holding hands on the lock screen. The man pinched his brows and said nothing. Jiang Xieshua felt even happier for some reason. It was probably Lu Linjie's answer just now that finally made her feel relieved. Jiang Xieshua unlocked her phone, paused for a moment on her moments, and then posted the hand-holding photo. Only Qiao Yi can see it. After pressing send, Jiang Xieshua felt guilty as if she had done something wrong, and she stuck out her tongue at Lu Linjie. Qiao Yi opened his phone and saw the latest notifications on his moments. Chapter 26. She was bored, so she clicked on it. A photo of them holding hands suddenly appeared in front of her. I have been with Lu Linjie for 7 years. How could Qiao Yi not recognize his hand? She was shaking all over and clicked on the picture with trembling hands. The image immediately filled the entire screen. The official announcement is, Mr. Lu is going to meet my parents with me, I hope to get their blessings tilde. Once, she was smart enough to take a picture of them holding hands and post it on WeChat Moments. What he got in return was the man's cold reply, don't do unnecessary things. With his hands hanging limply by his side, Qiao Yi looked at the ceiling in despair, slowly calming down. She smiled with relief and clicked like on the post. Then Qiao Yi typed a string of words, I wish you happiness. Jiang Xieshua saw one more message. When I clicked on it, I saw Qiao Yi's likes and blessings. A smug smile appeared on the corner of her lips. Lu family. Today, Qiao Yi asked Lu Linjie to go home for dinner. After Lu Linjie finished his work at the company, he went straight back to the Lu family's old house. As soon as he entered the door, the servants shouted in unison, Welcome home, young master. Qiao Yi is a very elegant and graceful lady. She was tall and slender, wearing a mink coat, and her thick hair was carefully combed back into a low bun. She looked much younger than her actual age, and skin care products were sent to the Lu family like water. When Qiao Yi saw Lu Linjie coming back, she smiled, stood up, and turned around in front of him. Linjie, look at this dress your father gave you. Does it look good? Lu Linjie glanced at her indifferently. He loosened his tie, handed it to the servant beside him, and whispered, Not bad. Qiao Yi became even happier and turned around a few more times before finally calming down. A table full of delicious dishes had already been prepared at home. She was feeling anxious just now. Will my son bring that unpresentable woman home? She has never been kind to Qiao Yi. Although Qiao Yi had been trying to please her, she had always had headaches, and after she pressed the acupoints a few times, the pain actually went away. You finally came back alone this time, and I can finally relax. Qiao Yi smiled widely, very happy. In her heart, the only person who is worthy of her son is a rich lady from an equal family background. The Qiao family went bankrupt, so Qiao Yi naturally looked down on Qiao Yi. Lu Linjie paused for a moment while drinking the soup, then put the spoon into his mouth. Qiao Yi winked. The servant at the side quickly handed over a photo. Linjie, what do you think of this girl? As soon as Mom saw her, she felt like she was a good match for you. Qiao Yi stopped and looked at Lu Linjie's expression. Seeing that he had no expression, I thought there was hope. I immediately put the photo in front of him with a smile. Look at her, she's so beautiful and has a good family background. Clang. Lu Linjie put down the spoon for soup and frowned, what do you want to say? Seeing him like this, Qiao Yi stopped talking nonsense. She said directly, if you want to marry a wife, you should marry someone with a good family background. Go meet her tomorrow and settle the marriage. Lu Linjie looked at her steadily. A long time. He said, I already have someone I'm engaged to, so you don't have to worry about it. Got it? Qiao Yi was stunned for a moment, then slammed the table and stood up. Mom will never agree to you marrying a woman like Qiao Yi. What's so good about a woman who sells her body? Do you know that there are all kinds of gossips about her outside? I will never agree to let her in. I tell you, either she or me, or I or she. She spoke firmly and Qiao Yi firmly disagreed with this marriage. A hint of unknown emotion flashed across Lu Linjie's dark eyes. He stood up, took the tie from the servant, and said coldly, I'm full, you eat slowly. Go away. Don't come back if you leave. I won't allow her to come in anyway. Lu Linjie's back turned around without a pause, walked out the door, got into the car and drove away, leaving Qiao Yi dumbfounded. It's over, it's over. Everything is messed up. How could Linjie be bewitched by a woman like this? What will happen if they really get engaged? The more Qiao Yi thought about it, the more scared she became. She quickly took out her cell phone and called Qiao Yi. The call was connected after a while. Qiao Yi thought she had seen it wrong, so she rubbed her eyes to make sure she was not dazzled. Mrs. Qiao, what can I do for you? Qiao Yi greeted politely. Qiao Yi's anger subsided instantly. She snorted and said, come to the Lu family tomorrow. I have something to tell you. After saying that, Qiao Yi hung up the phone. Qiao Yi looked at the phone with some confusion. But she also figured it out. Qiao Yi dislikes her so much, if she goes there tomorrow, it will be considered as severing ties with the Lu family. Although from the beginning to the end, the Lu family never took a fancy to her. Early in the morning, Qiao Yi took a car to the Lu family, and the servant told her with an apologetic look. Sorry, the lady is still sleeping. Please wait here for a moment, Miss Qiao. Qiao Yi nodded, then stood at the gate and waited for a long time. When the sun was about to set, the servant finally came out and asked her to come in. Qiao Yi in front of him was neatly dressed, with a delicate face and no sign of fatigue at all. How could she look like she had just woken up? It seems that Qiao Yi is trying to intimidate Qiao Yi as she did before. She used to work hard and never complain, but now she has nothing to do but smile bitterly. Do you know why I called you here? Qiao Yi raised her chin and looked at Qiao Yi with contempt. Qiao Yi shook his head honestly. Qiao Yi hated her very much and used to give her a cold look whenever she saw her. With a bang, the coffee was thrown hard onto the table. She said in a contemptuous tone, you are not worthy of my son at all. If you know what's good for you, leave my son immediately. He can't be delayed by you. In the past, Qiao Yi would immediately pick up the coffee and put it back in front of her. But now, Qiao Yi's eyes flashed, he nodded, and said nothing. Qiao Yi was a little surprised, but then continued, look at you, you have no family background and your reputation is so bad. Apart from your good looks, what else do you have to show for it? Don't blame me for speaking harshly, I am telling the truth. The Qiao family went bankrupt, and she climbed into Lu Linjie's bed, and the news spread everywhere. Mrs. Qiao, please be gentle with your words. It's my fault for getting involved with your son. I apologize to you here now. The unexpected development left Qiao Yi stunned. Qiao Yi took a deep breath and said, is this what you asked me to say today? She had heard Qiao Yi say these words several times before. But at that time, her mind and eyes were full of Lu Linjie, so she didn't take it to heart. Moreover, after Qiao Yi knew that Qiao Yi suffered from headaches, he specially went to learn massage techniques. She always thought she could melt Lu Linjie's mother's heart. But now, it's not necessary. Of course not. I called you here to tell you that the person who is engaged to my son can be anyone, but it can't be you. Chapter 27 Embarrassment. Qiao Yi looked dazed for a moment. It turns out that Lu Linjie is about to get engaged. It seems that he really likes Jiang Xiexue. She lost completely. Mrs. Qiao, I think you are mistaken. Qiao Yi's expression was cold. It's not me that your son is engaged to. Let your son tell you who it is. How could it not be you? You have seduced Linjie's soul away. He has quarreled with me several times because of you. Don't fool me here. Qiao Yi frowned. I originally thought you were an honest person, but now you're deceiving even an elder like me. I won't allow you to come in. The Lu family is simply too big. She'd better not continue to integrate. She is really tired. Qiao Yi's eyes were slightly red, and she said coldly, Madam Qiao, I won't bother you anymore. You really misunderstood. Mr. Lu's engagement partner is not me. When she said this, her voice choked up. She paused and looked at Qiao Yi seriously. Don't worry, this is my last time coming to the Lu family, Madam Qiao, take care. Seeing that Qiao Yi didn't sound like he was lying, Jiu was stunned. Although she looked down on Qiao Yi, she was still very clear about her character. Is it really not you? You are not with my son anymore. Knowing that the woman in front of him had already said it very tactfully, Qiao Yi forced a smile. Yes, Mr. Lu has someone he likes. Madam Jiu, I know you don't like me, I'm leaving now. Looking at Qiao Yi in front of her, Jiu suddenly didn't know what to say, and an awkward and embarrassed look appeared on her face in an instant. This high and mighty noble lady couldn't utter a word at this moment. Qiao Yi picked up her bag, took a deep breath, and planned to leave now. Somehow, Jiu felt a little uncomfortable. You're just giving up like that. In Jiu's mind, Qiao Yi would not give up the opportunity to marry into the Lu family. In the past, Qiao Yi was very attentive to her. Qiao Yi pulled up the shoulder strap of her bag with her hands and said calmly, "Don't worry, Madam Jiu, I won't appear in front of you again." After she finished speaking, she turned and left. Only a stubborn back is left. Looking at her back, Jiu leaned back on the sofa, frowning. Who is the person that Linjie is engaged to? No, I have to find out. Jiu's well-maintained face was now faintly tinged with anger. Soon, a professional private detective investigated the case. There was a stack of photos in front of Jiu. She picked up the photos and looked through them one by one, and her expression became worse and worse. It seems that Qiao Yi is telling the truth. The photos were all of Lu Linjie and Jiang Xieshue entering and leaving the mall together. The private investigator handed over a piece of paper. When Jiu Yarji saw it, her expression instantly became even uglier. Jiang Xieshue, 20 years old, is still a senior intern. My father is just an ordinary person, how could Lu Linjie fall in love with such a woman? Even worse than Qiao Yi. After all, the Qiao family was a wealthy family before they went bankrupt. Jiu wrote a check to the private detective as payment for completing the mission. After everyone left, she asked someone to call Butler Liu. What can I do for you? Butler Liu was wearing a tuxedo and his right hand, wearing a white glove, was placed on his chest. Jiu threw a photo over. Call her over to me. She paused, thinking that her son might protect her, so she gave another instruction. Let her come to see me alone. After receiving the instructions, Butler Liu took quick action. Which bag do you like? At this moment, a clerk in a luxury goods store looked at Jiang Xieshue with a smile. There was blue and red in front of her. Jiang Xieshue gritted her teeth, looking conflicted. She was holding a Supreme card, and the clerk thought he would definitely get a promotion this time, if he could sell one more bag. I don't know either. Which bag do you think is more suitable for me to carry? When the clerk saw that there was a chance, he immediately recommended the more expensive one to her. This blue one has crocodile patterns inlaid on the bag. This is a national limited edition, with only 20 in the world. Jiang Xieshue stood in front of the mirror, looking left and right. The shop door suddenly opened and Butler Liu, wearing a tuxedo, walked in. Hello, Miss Jiang, Mrs. Jiu wants to see you. Jiang Xieshue was startled and looked alert. I don't know any Mrs. Jiu. Did you find the wrong person? The little girl had a soft voice and looked harmless. Butler Liu could only continue to say, Mr. Lu's mother is Mrs. Jiu. Mrs. Jiu wants to invite you to visit the Lu family. Miss Jiang, please get in the car. Lu Linjie's mother wants to see her? Jiang Xieshue's eyes widened, her expression full of flattery. Does Lu Linjie really want to get engaged to her? Otherwise, Mrs. Jiu would not have taken the initiative to propose a meeting. Thinking of this, Jiang Xieshue felt secretly delighted and looked at Butler Liu with anticipation. What did Madame Jiu want to see me for? Is it because of Mr. Lu? Butler Liu looked at her expressionlessly. He is just a housekeeper and doesn't do anything extra. His current mission is to bring Jiang Xieshue back to the Lu family. Jiang Xieshue didn't feel angry even though she didn't get an answer. She put down her bag, took out her cell phone and was about to call Lu Linjie. But he was stopped by Butler Liu. Miss Jiang, Madam only wants to see you. The implication was that she should not tell Lu Linjie. Jiang Xieshue was suddenly at a loss. Want her to go alone? She was really nervous. Oh well. Jiang Xieshue quickly put down her phone and looked at the clerk. It would be bad for her to go to see Mr. Lu's mother empty-handed. The clerk had already given up in his heart. It seemed that he would not be able to make an order today. Jiang Xieshua pointed at the 2 bags and said, "Please pack both of them for me. They will look better." She took the 2 bags that she was told to pack carefully, and Butler Liu made a gesture of invitation. Sitting in the luxury car, Jiang Xieshua was nervous all the way and kept looking out the window. Soon, the car stopped. When Jiang Xieshua opened the car door, she saw Butler Liu bowing respectfully to Jiu Jia. "Madam, the person has been brought here. Okay, you can leave now." Jiu Yaji looked Jiang Xieshua up and down, her eyes full of disgust. Jiang Xieshua was stunned, not knowing what to do next. "Are you Jiang Xieshua?" Jiang Xieshua nodded obediently and handed the 2 bags in her hand to Jiu Jia. "Aunt, this is a little gift from me, please accept it." Jiu Yaji glanced at the 2 bags. "How can you, a senior intern, afford such an expensive bag?" She said this with a hint of meaning. Jiang Xieshua suddenly became embarrassed. "Aunt, Okay, come in and talk. I'm more tired than you." After saying that, Jiu Yaji ignored her and walked straight into the villa. Jiang Xieshua bit her lip and followed quickly. The servant came over and poured her a cup of tea, then left. Jiu Jia looked Jiang Xieshua up and down.